The Steamship Authority is a proud partner in many Falmouth community events, including town meeting coverage, and for good reason. Not only do we have a terminal and offices here, about 1/3 of our employees call Falmouth their home. We always work hard to serve our neighbors, friends, and the traveling public. We recently put 7 new electric buses into service at our Falmouth parking lots. We're adding new vessels to our fleet, continuing work on our energy-efficient Woods Hole terminal buildings, and adding solar panels at our largest parking lot. At the Steamship Authority, we're serving the islands and you.
Welcome to the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce.
The Falmouth Chamber is dedicated to working on behalf of our members to make Falmouth a better place to live, work, and conduct business. We are committed to developing the economic, cultural, educational, and civic interests of our community and welcome the support from all organizations to achieve our combined goals. Whether you call Falmouth home, are a summer resident, or a visitor, we hope you take advantage of all that the Chamber has to offer.
Hi, it's Brendan from Crane Appliance. Since 1983, our goal as a family-owned company has been simple: to give our neighbors on the Cape and Islands a great shopping experience. Rest easy knowing our professional team will listen to your needs and help you pick the perfect appliances for your home. At Crane Appliance, we know how difficult appliance shopping can be. Our team is here for you. Crane Appliance, we call the Cape and Islands home.
Carlson Printing, 508-548-7303. Our email address is carlsonprinting@gmail.com. Carlson Printing, for all your printing needs. John's Liquor Store, 729 Main Street, Falmouth, 508-548-2287.
I'm going to call to order the regular meeting of the Town of Falmouth Select Board of August 10th, 2026. If everyone could please silence their cell phones, and please notify the chair if you are making an audio or video recording of this open session meeting. Lynn, I see you. The placement and operation of the recording equipment should not interfere with the conduct of the meeting. If you would all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We are going to start this evening with a special recognition, and I'm not sure which of you or all of you are coming up here to recognize the large team involved in the Peterson Farm Fence project. So come on up.
Greetings. I'm Leonard Johnson. I'm before you tonight representing the 300 Committee Land Trust. At our annual meeting on July 16th, we presented the 2026 Special Places Award to the team that built the fence and the gate at Peterson Farm. The project was indeed special. Several of the members of the team are with us tonight: Bill Hallstein, Bob Skilton, and Mark Kaspersik. And Joanne Miramoto, president of the 300 Committee, is here, and Susie Hallstein, a board member, is here. The team represented a partnership between Town Public Works, Parks Department, the Conservation Department, and a number of community volunteers. The team undertook a daunting task. They built a fence out of black locust logs. If you and I were starting to build a fence, we would not start with black locust logs. They cut them at Coonavista Reservation. Black locust is an invasive species, a very difficult wood, is extremely hard, and its one beneficial factor is that it lasts forever. Time does not allow me to describe the intricacies of the traditional method that they used, but they did not take the easy way. We have prepared a poster board so that people can see the various stages of the process. We thought that the town might like to display this in Town Hall. On Wednesday morning, we are presenting another one to the Department of Public Works for display at their facility. Peter told me he just had to have one. So here are the members of the team. Let's see, we're going to start with the DPW. We're going to start with Mark reading the names of the DPW highway people. Can you read it from here? You want to read it from here?
Right. Yeah, I'm going to read from here. I can see it a little easier. I just want to thank DPW for all they have done. They were instrumental in this project, otherwise it never would have happened. So for DPW Highway, I want to thank Craig Atkinson, Calvin Bowen, Josh Clark, Scott Eustace, Christian Evans, Larry Flores, Jim Grady, Kevon Green, Scott Limitanen, Peter Marshall, Doug Potter, Matt Resendez, Craig Norton, and Mike Souza.
And from the Parks Division, Leon Murchison, who did a lot of heavy lifting because he's big and strong, Brett Nangle, Jeremiah Pearson, Martin Potter, who milled the lumber for the gate, Dan Preston, Sean Speroni, and Mike Tassinari.
Peter and Mark.
Oh, and DPW Director Peter McConerty and Conservation Department Mark Kasperzik.
Can we get the next slide? How do we do that?
Arrow down.
Arrow down on the keyboard. There you go.
And the volunteers, who were wonderful and playful with their chainsaws. Willie Burgess, Bob Butcher, Tor Clark, Dennis DeTuilo, Tom Duncan, Barry Good, me, Andy Jackson, Joe Kasperzik is related to Mark, and he would leave Rowley at some before daylight hour to come down and join us in the middle of the winter. And he would be there before we got there. Pretty wonderful. Mark Kurtz, Jeff Oppenheim, Bob Pininsky, Milton Skilton, Barb Walsh, and Dan Walsh. A wonderful gang of people. Real pleasure to work with everyone.
So we urge you all to go down to Peterson Farm for yourself and look at this marvel. Also, be sure to check out the new stone benches. They are outstanding. I think that you will agree, well, at least I hope you will agree, that this is another example of the remarkably talented and creative people we are fortunate to have in this town. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for helping us recognize that special collaboration. Moving on to other recognitions, I would like to take a moment to recognize our lifeguards and all of our beach staff. Our lifeguards have truly earned that title this summer, facing multiple life and death situations, and today faced a really scary and potentially really dangerous situation with a car colliding into the Ellen Mitchell bathhouse at Surf Drive. And by all accounts, all of our beach staff, and also, and I'm glad, Mr. McConerty, that you're here as well, DPW and staff from Town Hall, by all accounts, really came together and worked very hard all day to respond to that situation, make sure that the beach department staff have a new location to start their days and do their jobs for the rest of this week, and make sure that that building was safe. So thank you to everyone involved. And Mr. Renshaw, I know you have a bit of an update on that situation.
More details.
Do you want to go ahead?
I sure will. I just want to let the community know that thanks to Peter's hard work, the assistant town manager, Maggie Clayton, the beach superintendent, and all of her staff, and the IT department, We've actually moved the entire beach operation from the Ellen Mitchell bathhouse until it gets repaired. We have actually a contractor coming out to take a look at it and give us a quote. Anyway, we've moved the operation to the old civil defense room in the Garden Terrace section of Town Hall, the basement of Town Hall. So I encourage anybody that is still in need of a beach sticker, that's where you go, downstairs at Town Hall. And actually, we've got a couple of stations, I should say this, a couple of the beach sticker issue stations, the PCs, are actually set up on the first floor down by the HR office. And for folks that have already visited and gotten maybe an original sticker, it's at it's a small conference room just outside the HR. So that's where you go to get the sticker. For the next couple of weeks, we anticipate having a better idea of the timeline for repair in a couple of weeks.
Well, thank you again, and job well done in a really difficult situation. Are there other recognitions? Yes, Ms. Klein.
Just want to recognize all of the community members that come together to make the Woods Hole Science Stroll happen. One of whom is at this table. I was there with some out-of-town visitors, and it was an overwhelmingly joyful experience. And seeing kids learning about science and their adults learning about science, people of all ages. I encountered so many residents who had also brought along visitors, and it was just a really terrific event. And so thank you to all those who helped make that possible.
All right, thank you.
Not really official business, but the Porch Fest was really a fun, successful event, so just report that it was well done.
Excellent. All right, moving on to announcements.
Just a quick plug that the 35th Annual Falmouth Walk is this Saturday at 10 a.m. That's an important community event, brings people together and raises money for organizations that are doing great work here in Falmouth. So I'll be there, and I hope to see some others there as well.
And if you want to register, go to Timber Bar at 6 o'clock on Friday.
All right, terrific. And hopefully nobody needs a reminder that this weekend is road race weekend. Before we get to that, you may also have seen this in the paper, but did want to share that the county commissioners on Wednesday will be discussing water supply issues kind of Cape-wide, and have invited Falmouth to be represented, and our water superintendent and Mr. Brown will both be attending that meeting. So, any other announcements? Okay. If not, Mr. Renshaw, over to you for your report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two quick updates this evening. First off, we're receiving a lot of phone calls from very frustrated motorists trying to get around town in the summer months. And this is, as you all know, related to the Great Pond Phase 1 sewer construction project. Literally is impacting 3 major arterial roadways. It's an important project, obviously. The frustration is that, couldn't we have waited to get us through most of the summer? The contractors are on a really tight timeline in order to get the project complete. In the future, we'll talk about maybe ways that we can better manage and phase out some of the work. But the important part I wanted to give out tonight to folks in the community, on the town's homepage, the wastewater department division, I should say, puts out 3-week windows of construction updates, including detours and routes that are going to be closed. So I would encourage people to go to the town website. The next 3 weeks, starting this week, August 10th, is actually posted on the website for people to see what's going on. And also, if you want to stay up to the minute with updates, I would encourage people to go to the town webpage, very, very bottom. There's a Falmouth Alerts sign up. You click on that link, and you actually go to the Notify Me section, which is about the middle of that page, and sign up and register. I've done it, and you can literally sign up, subscribe to updates from all the boards and committees throughout town, but specifically with this project, you can sign up for email or text updates with regards to road closures. So I'd encourage people to do that. And the last update I have, following our July 13th Select Board meeting, during which we conducted the 2 public hearings for the Raw Bar and the Boathouse, and some violations that were found at both of those establishments. On Friday of last week, August 7th, we issued the notices of findings. So the establishments are now aware of the corrective measures that have to be taken. And that is all I have.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions? All right, we will move to public comment. Thank you all for coming. Public comment may be made on routine matters not on the agenda this evening. Comments are limited to 2 minutes. Please introduce yourself, and since the matter has not been included on the agenda, the Select Board may not participate in discussion of the topic. Do we have anyone for public comment this evening? Yes, please, come on up. And you...
Good evening. I'm Ruth Gainer. I live at 34 High Street. I'm part of...
Do we need to turn that, just one moment, do we need to turn that on?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Ruth Gainer. Good evening, and thank you for your time. I'm part of a group of Falmouth residents who have followed housing issues since becoming aware of affordable housing needs more than 6 years ago. We have attended countless meetings and read widely in our efforts to learn procedures governing housing plans. Prior to last week's vote, Chair Goldstone counseled that best use of town funds should be the deciding factor. But the deciding vote was based on the bird in the hand proverb. That metaphor connotes the easiest solution, not the best. It seemed as though the sense of urgency we have been looking for a long time was suddenly applied to a proposal that hadn't gone through the steps required of other proposals. We must question whether the rapid approval of funds for another age-restricted structure is either the best, the easiest, or the most risk-free solution for Falmouth. Demolishing the historic structure at 545 Main Street is sure to cause many delays, even if that bylaw is revised. Also, additional monies needed for the new proposal are not guaranteed. And we received word today that funds withdrawn from Mr. Galasso's proposal will likely be put back, which would lessen the amount that he would need from the town for a workforce housing project. Falmouth taxpayers are owed more transparency for what has happened. We welcome the senior housing that has gone up, but the plight of workers leaving the Cape or living in cars in parking lots or in tents in the woods, and the welfare of those who need their services shouldn't be ignored.
Ms. Gaines, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
We urge the Select Board to support workforce housing more forcefully. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment? If not, we will move on to the consent agenda. Under licenses, number 1, consider an application by Kravings Pizza and Ice Cream LLC, DBA Simply Divine Pizza Company at 261A Main Street for a change of hours. Number 2, consider a vote to approve the application by Kravings Pizza and Ice Cream LLC, DBA Simply Divine Pizza Company at 261A Main Street for a change of DBA to Little Rossa Pizzeria and Espresso Bar. Number 3, consider a vote to approve the application by the Old Casino LLC, DBA The Old Casino, 286 Grand Avenue, Suite 9, for a change of hours to its all-alcoholic beverages restaurant license.
I have a question on that.
So we'll hold number 3. Under administrative orders, number 1, consider a vote to authorize the Marine and Environmental Services Department to apply for an FY27 Seaport Economic Council dredging and regional equipment grant for construction dredging at the Eel River Inlet.
Hold, please.
Hold. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve licenses 1 and 2 under consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we will go back to licenses number 3. Old Casino, Mr. Brown, you had a question?
Yeah, not an impactful question, but I'm just curious of what the current hours are I couldn't find them anywhere. And if we don't have it, I'm still willing to approve it as just a
I thought that had
curiosity.
been,
Madam Chair?
yes.
I'm sorry, I'm Alex Constein. I can,
Come right up to either of these microphones, please. Thank you.
Want to serve breakfast, right?
nice to see you all again. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm Alex Con's son, Chase. I was here. I'm the one who possesses the liquor license in my name as a manager. We currently operate at 11 a.m. And just from, I'll say requests from residents and guests coming to Falmouth, they'd like to, when we open up at 8 a.m., have the option to, buy like a mimosa or a, what's
Bloody
that one?
Mary.
Bloody Mary.
Yeah, exactly that one.
I believe that was the
I'm
example
not a
in
big
the
fan of those,
application.
but other people like them a lot.
Right, okay, thank you. Appreciate
Yep.
it.
Thank you. Okay.
That's all, I was just curious about that, so thank
Okay.
you.
So then, do we have a motion to approve the application by the old casino?
So
owner?
moved.
Second?
Okay. Any further discussion?
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Good luck.
Okay, administrative orders, the Marine and Environmental Services dredging grant, Mr. Mascali.
Yeah, thank you. I certainly have no problem with the authorization. However, this is an important project, and we know about the issues we've had in town with dredging, and I just thought a little explanation of the project might be helpful for the public to understand what's going on down there at the Eel River Inlet.
Okay.
Yes, so Madam Chair and Select Board Member Muscali, unfortunately, I requested someone from MES be here tonight to give a little bit more project details. I can say that the project has been being looked at for quite some time. The total value of the project is reflected in the packet, is about $150,000. There's a 50% match, local match that's required. In the background summary, it does talk about some of the issues that we're currently having with that particular inlet. It's problematic because of its narrowing width, creating a dangerous navigational issue because of the high velocity of the water that's entering and exiting the embayments. Very swift currents making navigation through and in the inlet difficult for even very experienced boaters. They intend to, if the grant is approved and we move forward with the project, likely we're going to move forward with the project regardless of whether we're successful with the grant. It's that important. Greg Frazier, the MES director, was asked to seek grant fundings for the project. We anticipate, as is indicated in the agenda report, that the dredge material would be deposited on Washburn's Island to mitigate in some way for the loss of the bird habitat at the spits at the inlet. That's really the only kind of project details that I have. A lot of it was included in the packet, obviously. I can tell you that we understand this particular grant cycle is hyper-competitive. The state is anticipating issuing between 3 and 5 total grant awards, so it's a very competitive process. And the deadline for submittal is, I should say, August 17th, so it was important to get it on tonight's agenda so we could make that deadline.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I had also had a few questions. Mine were more related to how long this project would be effective for, right? So what's the time lapse between dredging and needing to dredge again, which is some variability, but if it's an expense, I'd be curious how long that would be effective for. And if the sand itself is a good match for Washburn Island, because that makes a difference for how long it sticks around.
Sure, great questions. I can only offer partial answers. So we did get an indication from Greg that this is not anticipated to be an annual project by any stretch. It has not been done in a long time. I think if Greg were here, he would be able to offer, Greg Frazier, MES director, would be able to offer more insight than I can, but even the experts would say it's hard to predict the flow of sand. So the hope and expectation is that this would last for at least several years, maybe longer, but it is badly needed. And then with respect to the relative match for the sand, I don't have specific answers, but as you probably know, we can't, by permit, we're not allowed to put it somewhere where there isn't a match.
Thank you.
I'm prepared to move to authorize the Marine and Environmental Services Department to apply for a FY 2027 Seaport Economic Council dredging and regional equipment grant for the construction dredging at the Eel River Inlet.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to our first business item, consider a vote to authorize an application for Community Preservation Act funding for improvements to the softball field located at 340 Teaticket Highway, adjacent to the school administration building. Mr. Renshaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our outstanding recreation director, I think, is it there? There she is, Julie Williams-Tinkham, ladies and gentlemen, is going to give us an overview of the project itself. But as you all probably know, as Julie's working her way to the podium, the Cape Cod Codgers are currently utilizing that field, not exclusively, but they use it a lot, and it is in disrepair. And this grant would help us get it up to snuff. Julie.
Yeah, the Codgers last year actually tried to apply for CP funding, and because they're an organization and not part of the town, they couldn't submit the application. So it is a field that needs work. Codgers use it almost exclusively. It's not, we do allow other people, but there's such a huge organization, and it's a field that they also care for. So they're currently doing a lot of work maintaining that field, but it is not super safe for them. It's the outfield, the field itself needs to be redone, leveled. There's ruts. The outfield fence is not safe, and there's also been some storm damage. If you've seen along Route 28, the black fence there along the administration field is in disrepair as well. So ideally, this project would have, be leveled, redo the grass and all the fencing, and put in irrigation. And it would be a fantastic field that the Codgers would continue to use. I think they said they're up to 350 folks that are participating in that organization. And it would be also available for other folks to use as well. Plus, it's really visible in town. It's right kind of in the middle of everything. And every time I drive by it, I kind of wince a little bit when I look at the outfield fence and the status of the field.
Questions from the board on this item?
No.
No. I will say given the water challenges that we're facing, I have some qualms about the irrigation, but also my experience of the CPC process is that they're fairly open to modifications of projects as necessary as the process moves along, and we are under a time crunch for this round of CP funding to move this application along if we're going to do that. So.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think these repairs are long needed and necessary. The Codgers are a wonderful organization, bring a lot of people into town. That helps our economy as well. So I certainly am in favor of the application.
Ms. Klein.
I'm just curious because this is a location that has come up on this board and in other conversations with various people in town as a building that we may be using differently in the future. And so I'm curious why we've chosen this field. I guess the Codgers use 4 different fields in town. And I'm very hesitant to spend a significant amount of money improving the field when in a few years we may decide to use that property for something very different. And I wonder if we had considered trying to significantly improve a different field, or if there is another way that we could approach it, because I would hate to put out, I'm very supportive of recreation, as you know, Ms. Dickman-Williams, but I don't want to spend now and 3 or 4 years down the line, we are doing something really different there, and that field is not an appropriate thing to have at that location anymore. So had you considered any of the other fields when preparing this?
Well, as from my perspective, myself as well as Jeremiah Pearson, we look at the status of all of the fields and kind of where the needs are. And this field has been on the capital plan for some time. I can't speak to the building usage, but I can just when we look at all of the fields in town, this is one that is in dire need of improvement.
Madam Chair, I can just comment on that, and just to say that great question, and obviously, looking at long-term and how things might change in the future with respect to uses. Obviously, I can't argue with that. The one thing that I would just point out is, as you may or may not be aware, there is a Article 97 protection on the softball field as a park use. So, not that it's impossible to change the restriction, but if the idea were to change the use of that property and to use the softball field for something other than recreation, there would be a extensive Article 97 process to remove that restriction and find alternate land where we could put a park.
Mr. Johnson, can you clarify that we have it documented that this is Article 97? Because I looked at the GIS data over the weekend, and I could see in the GIS data that it said Article 97 : unknown. It did have recreation on there, but is it actual Article 97 and in-town votes and otherwise totally protected?
It's likely protected by Article 97, as we've talked about before.
So we don't have 100% confidence in likely?
That's not what I was saying. In fact, I'll just continue with what I was about to say. As we've talked about before, the Article 97 application is a fact-intensive inquiry, and there are a lot of factors that you have to look at. I cannot say that this particular property ticks every single box, but it ticks a lot of them. And one of the most important things that one would look at to see if Article 97 applies is whether CPC funding has been used to rehabilitate or update the land in the past for recreation purposes. And that is absolutely the case here. If, depending on what the project was, I don't know how far down into the analysis you want to get, but I can't say with 100% certainty that any of our properties are Article 97 protected. What I can say that it's very likely that the land here cannot be used for a different purpose without going through the process.
Okay. If I could just clarify, when Town Council refers to using CP funds, she's not talking about this application. Right. She's talking about prior expenditures of CP funds.
Thank you. I was just going to ask that question. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. It was my understanding that CPC funds totaling $785,000 were used for the historic preservation of the building, not recreational, but I could be wrong on that one. I would like to second Ms. Klein's concern about this as well. This doesn't play, it has been on the capital plan, but we don't have a strategic plan against which we're managing against. This is $500,000. I'm sure we could use $500,000 somewhere else. I just don't want us to put in a tremendous amount of work on something that has good benefit for the town, but not maximum benefit. So I have major concerns, and I'm not in favor.
Can I ask a question about the timeline for the work, and also with this kind of rehabilitation, how long you would expect that to last? I know we have, and I requested earlier today, and have a document with a long list of CPC-funded projects that are from prior years still in the works. So I know we've got a bit of a backlog, and I'm just curious if you have a sense of what the timeline for getting the work done would be.
I do, and I wrote it in the application, that the draft that I have for CP funding. I don't off the top of my head.
I believe that was like a 27, 28 timeline. I guess my question is just whether that's realistic given the backlog that we have? And then how long would you expect the renovations to last?
That I don't feel qualified to answer how long the renovations would last for. It's going to depend on a few different factors, and I think that our Parks Department would have a better idea.
Okay.
So I just, if I could, I would just comment that, we've had a study, the Gale report, I think it was several years ago, identifying our shortcomings with regard to playing fields. And given the fact that this is an established field, this amount of money to get this field back in good playing condition, I think is a good value compared to spending a couple million on trying to build another new field somewhere else. You might feel more safe about, because we have talked about this property for other uses, but at the same time, it's a field that's there, it's available to be used, and I know it's a lot of money again, but I think it's a good value and a good use of the money, and it's also a good collaboration with the Cape Codgers, who are taking care of it, because our Parks Department has a challenge to maintain the fields, and I think if we made another investment in this field, that they would be more motivated to even participate at a higher level of helping take care of it. So I think I'm in favor of it, in spite of all our financial woes.
Yeah. Another question related, but not directly to this application, but given that relationship with the Codgers, is this a field where we should be looking at a licensing agreement like we've pursued with the lacrosse and soccer clubs for those fields where they're doing maintenance? Is that something that we have done or should be doing?
I'm not aware of one, but there should be one if there isn't.
Okay. All right. Is there any further discussion or other questions from the board? No. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to authorize an application for Community Preservation Act funding for improvements to the softball field located at 340 Teaticket Highway, adjacent to the school administration building.
And I'll second that.
Okay. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is, motion carries 3-2. Thank you. Okay, our next item, discuss and consider a vote to transmit the capital plan to the Finance Committee. Mr. Renshaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you recall, I did a presentation at the July 27th meeting. It was an overview summary of the FY27 capital plan as well as the 10-year CIP. Our relatively new, John has been here, I think this is week 4, going on week 4. John Arnett, our finance director, is going to be providing more detail looking at capital projects in the 10-year plan. $1 million and over was the threshold we use. We're trying to illustrate for the board and the community the tax implications associated with each of these projects, kind of drilling in a little more detail than we did at the last meeting. And John is going to answer any questions you may have in the presentation.
I'd just like to say thanks for staying on.
Yeah. It's been a very interesting few weeks, we'll say that. Knowledge by fire hose, for sure. All right, we'll jump right on into here. So, agenda, we're just going to be going over the process, the same slides that you sort of saw before, and then, as Mike just mentioned, the project's over $1 million we looked at. Then we're going to talk about the bondable projects, and then the implications of those. Again, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. This is the same slide that you saw before. The information that was previously presented, the data there is all the same, with slight changes, which we'll talk about as well. But again, this shows the large amount of work that goes into building a capital project budget. All the details, the collaboration across all departments, and the communication up and out. So let's start out with the 10-year improvement plan. Again, this is the same number, the $104 million for FY27. The second number, which is the 10-year total, there's a little asterisk there. There was a little tweak to that number. This is the number that is the actual number. As there's transition in an organization, some formulas may be overseen or looked at. So this is the true value. Summed all of the totals and all the columns. This is the actual value right here. So that's the $885 billion. So this is the total capital spending from all of the projects. Another one inside of there, there's a $250,000 project that came in for Woods Hole drainage. That's also included in the free cash numbers, so that's why the numbers have tweaked slightly from what was presented previously.
Excuse me, did you say all capital projects, including all sewer projects?
Sewer, free cash supported, all of those included in the 10-year.
Okay, great, thanks.
So again, this was the same schedule as you all have seen before. The numbers are, again, summing and pulling back to those capital detail lines across the board, and there you go. So the 885 number on the bottom is the total plan. So again, the numbers are not really changing from the detail that was presented. Yes, ma'am.
Just a quick question, though, because the fiscal year 27 total on this slide is 250,000 more, so that's that money that you just mentioned, right?
Correct. That's the $250,000 of the that Woods Hole drainage project. There were a couple of tweaks to that in the submission of the packet. That's a learning curve as you come into a new organization. I bear that from what's inside of the capital plan to what is being presented now, these small administrative types of things. So I appreciate that. Great question. So as I came into here, I was looking at where the monies were to be deployed. And this is an overarching graph of that 10-year plan. Those are every dollar that is in that detailed budget and where the percentage is across the board. So you can see that the majority is going to wastewater, education, and then, well, wastewater is part of DPW, but you can see those main pieces as they're being funded through here. So when looking at use of funds over time, you want to make sure that you're looking at those large outlays and seeing how you can do things efficiently, where those monies are going, and a little bit more detail onto the public works, which is, it makes a lot of sense. Public works, they house fields, they house highway, they house everything under the sun that a lot of the capital bonded projects are going to go to. A lot of outlays go to this area. So as a summary, you pulled it over to the side, and you can see that 38% of that dollar amount is going to the wastewater, and then public works, water, and facilities. So the other ones in there are the other divisions, which are, I wrote it down, highway as well. So that's where the large majority of these outlays are going over time, which again, makes sense. So we're going to spend a little bit, I know I'm going really fast right now. We're going to spend a little bit of time as we're talking about these projects and what it looks like to the taxpayer, what it looks like as you issue these. So when we do a capital outlay plan, we're also looking at these free cash, these other pieces that are funding sources such as free cash, grants, other available funds. This slide is very similar to the previous slide that you had, but I also want to emphasize that as we're looking at these next slides, we're looking at the total capital project cost. So if you see a project coming up, we'll use the building renovations for the schools. That's $150 million in the detailed plan. That doesn't take into account MSBA funding. It doesn't take into account anything else. It's assuming that that full bearing of that cost is taken in on that first year and then depreciated, and then the debt schedule comes down over time. Reality is a little different than what's going to be happening here. We do different outlays. You don't bond all the project costs up front. The reimbursable amounts, the library, for example, is a totally different project cost than what is actually the taxpayer is going to be paying when it hits the bill. So that's what I want to say before we get into this. So you will see some spikes going up and high growth rates, but those are not indicative to what actually happens in reality. But at the same time, it's important to understand when these capital outlays take place, so the way we budget and we can plan ahead of time. So again, these are right now in FY27, we're looking at these funding sources. Again, same slide as before, the funding $250 from free cash for the drainage of Woods Hole. And then the borrowing, again, as mentioned before, I wanted to make mention that because it's approved doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be issued all in one lump sum. It could be spread out over time. So chronologically speaking, this is what we're looking at right now over the 10-year plan. These are when they're going to come up to be for approval. So this is when the actual year for approval. After you get approval, you issue the debt, and then the bill comes due, much like you would do any other type of a debt. And personally, you get the money up front, and then they start collecting at a later period. So what ends up happening is you would issue a debt in one fiscal year, but the next fiscal year is when you would actually incur the payment. So as you see down here, you can see when these projects you would authorize. And before I move on, you'll see that there's a down in 2035 and then 2036. You'll see 2033, I'm sorry, and 2035. There's a gap of that 1 year. So as we move forward in the future graphs, you'll see a blip. That little blip is that piece. There's nothing docketed here. And back to the cost, that $1 million cost we talked about, bondable projects. We're supposed to look at projects over $1 million and weigh free cash or bonding. What's the best use, right? So you would want to bond design in part of a construction. It's depreciable. You can do with free cash too, but again, looking back at the history of what Falmouth does, these would be the projects that would be coming up. So again, these are the ones that are non-wastewater projects, all the way down through. And again, you see that it stops before 2034. Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
I have a question which town management might be better positioned to answer, but one thing that has not been clear to me, and as a town meeting member was not always clear to me, what's the priority? How are we choosing the order that things go on this list? Because I'm thinking about, for example, I was touring the rec center as the rec committee liaison, and that rec center's roof replacement is out in fiscal year 35, I think, and it's actively leaking and damaging the floor that we recently paid to put in. And so I'm just really curious about how are we choosing the order of these things, because some of it doesn't make logical sense to me.
So the process begins with meetings with the department heads each year. Peter, myself, the finance director meet with the department heads, and we go over each of their project requests. If it's a new item, they have to justify the reason for that. If there's an item that we feel we can defer, using the recreation center roof, I'm aware that we replaced the wood flooring, and I don't think our recreation director is still here, but we just recently replaced the wood flooring. It was my understanding we had the roof repaired so that it wasn't leaking. I wasn't aware that there's current leaks in the roof, to be honest with you. But the process is a kind of an evaluation and analysis between town manager, assistant town manager, and the department heads, looking at funding availability, again, looking to limit the use of free cash, and trying to find out, trying to assign a priority. The departments in the project detail sheet, which you should have a copy of that in your packets, are required, I should say, to list a priority number, and that gives us going into those department level meetings kind of a sense for what the departments think the priority is for each of the projects. This particular year, we were pretty tight with how we required them to list one and only one number one priority project. In past years, I think there was like one A's, one B's. So we were a little bit tighter with that criteria as far as the number one project. But that's, in essence, it's based on a series of discussions between the department heads, what they assess their needs to be, how critical the need happens to be, and whether or not it has to be accomplished in that plan year, or it could be deferred to future years if there's not any additional costs associated with that deferral.
And I'm surprised to hear that the roof's leaking too, because that roof contract was not that long ago. It was maybe a year or two before this building was built, so that roof should be good for many more years. Are you sure that it's leaking now?
I'm very sure.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know.
I don't know what the date of I don't believe there was a full roof replacement. There may be different sections. There may have been a section of roof that was replaced. I know there were roof repairs within the last 5 to 10 years. And the only other thing that I would add is that, as you're aware, we just had a comprehensive building study performed, and the intent is to use that building study to prioritize our spending in terms of building repairs. Now, sometimes leaks develop after the comprehensive study is done, and those plans need to be adjusted. But to answer your basic question, how do we prioritize building repairs? The answer is through the comprehensive building study.
Have we ever considered, have we considered, I've been using I have a little more time right now than I do during the school year. So I've been trying to learn as much as I can using the resources from MMA and watching old webinars, particularly with respect to capital planning. And I was particularly struck by one community, Great Barrington, which MMA did a webinar and they featured the way that they're doing their capital planning. And they actually have a numerical score that is assigned to projects, and things like longevity, the longer it lasts, the better it scores. If it's going to decrease expenses for the town, that gets a good score, right? And that, because then you can actually compare projects across departments in a way that's maybe less squishy sounding to me than, and so I don't know if we'd ever considered something like that.
So we have, and actually the comprehensive building inventory, condition inventory study that Peter referred to that we did a couple of years ago, the capital planning tool of that is just now fully come online. Greg Endicott, our facilities manager, has been working with Brightly, the consultant, to fine tune that. But that, in essence, will do just that. It will assign scores to each of the buildings and each of the systems of the buildings, the roofing, the HVAC. So we do have that now. We didn't have that 2 years ago, but we do now. And I think we're going to begin, as we progress in the 10-year plan, to utilize that more and more, that Brightly study, because it's continuously being updated.
Great, thank you.
If I could just ask a question, just clarification. We're carrying 153 million plus for the schools. That's the Lawrence School renovation that we're talking about?
I believe that 150 is for that renovation. Is that correct? The Lawrence?
That's correct.
But that does not include what we expect to get from MIFA for the grant, right?
Correct. I've spoken with Paul as well as some of the staff over there about the renovation that's taking place. It's a really good estimate that has been provided. They're right now going through those plans right now with MSBA and going through that process to get that firm number in. So that's what we're looking at right now.
Right. I just want the public to be aware that it's probably not going to be 150 million out of our pocket at the end of the day. That's all. But I understand you have to show it that way, waiting for the money to come in or the grant to be approved.
Well, if I could, it's going to really be a while before we know what the real numbers are, because it's 100 million to bring it up to code, and Paul just used the arbitrary number of 50 million for the renovations. And now that we're going to spend $2 million on an architect to really develop the plans and a cost estimate to get a real sense of what it is. So I wouldn't guarantee or expect that we would spend less, because it could be more.
No, I just want to point out that we are expecting some a considerable amount, 43% of reimbursement. That's all I'm saying, Doug.
If we agree to their terms of what to include and not to include.
Right. You mean whether we have an auditorium or not?
Well, we already have the auditorium, luckily, but...
All right.
Well, that's all to come in the school building process. I also have questions with the reimbursable projects about the tax ramifications, but maybe we can do that when we get to some of the charts of the tax ramifications a little bit later.
Sure. Yes. Part of this slide was also talking about reimbursements and things of that nature. For example, the clean water can reimburse 25% of projects 1 million and greater, all these types of other plans that come through. So yes, this is, again, as an example, as a process to figure out and sort of get a baseline for what those impacts will be. So another way to look at it, this is, again, these are the large projects as you go through time stacked on as far as the total projects that were funded by issuance year. So again, if there is FY27, then we would be looking at those costs coming online in 2028, so forth and so on. back to the 2034 no requests over that bondable period, then you can see right there, there's nothing in that FY 2035. Again, these are those larger pieces on those prior slides. I thought it was just a really great example so you can visualize these larger as they're coming in the authorizations. Sure.
Sorry, the thing that really stands out here, and it shows up again when we start looking at the tax ramifications and total debt service, is this FY29. So first of all, what we're seeing in FY28 are this is the issuance year, and then it will show up again in terms of tax ramifications in that fiscal year, but those are projects that are in the FY27 request. So there's
You'll have that
there.
1 year
Right.
delay. So what will typically ends up happening is we'll go out to market for a dollar amount, and the market comes back and says you can have X millions of dollars. Your first payment is due in 6 months from now, which typically falls into the next fiscal year. So that's when we start building, and back to Councilman Collins' mentioned about budget impact in future years as you're doing these capital planning. That's how it hits the projects as you're making these decisions. It's the next fiscal year. So these get taken into account as we're estimating debt service and if it's authorized and things of that nature.
May I ask a question?
Well, I had one other question, sorry, which is the two projects that are really driving that spike, right? Is Lawrence School building renovation and the outfall pipe.
Correct.
Do we have any control over the timing of either of those projects?
So, yeah, I can speak to that. So on the outfall project, that will hopefully be accepted by the Clean Water Trust, the state revolving fund, which means we get potentially zero interest loans. Worst case, if we're accepted, 2% interest loans. And as you may suspect, no, we do not control when we issue that debt through the fund, but small price to pay when you're getting that interest subsidy. But then with the school, we would control the borrowing. So the school funding is different. They give us, I believe the way the program now works is they go through the exhaustive process of what is eligible to be reimbursed, and that is received as a flat dollar amount. They do not dictate how the town borrows the money.
Correct.
So that's different than the library process that we're currently in, where the timing of borrowing is very strictly mandated by the state.
So no, even in the case of the library grant, the library dictates a timeline about when you get design funds, when you get authorized for construction funds, but then it is a reimbursement. They don't, to my knowledge, they don't, again, tell you exactly when you need to borrow the funds. They're particular about the town meeting votes and the timeline for the town meeting votes, but not when you issue the actual bonds.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Muscali?
Yeah, kind of along the same line of your question, Chair, but I mean, is there any way that the overall cumulative impact for those 3 or 4 years, 2029 to 2032, when it starts lessening, where that tax impact to the homeowner can be kind of modulated so that it's not all 600, in the first year? So thank you if you're going to.
Great questions. I'm loving this. This is great questions. As someone who loves finance, I love these questions. So absolutely. So a little bit more clarification on the MSBA funding process too. They have a very strict guideline as far as what you have to produce, when you produce it, so forth and so on. And as long as you meet those standards, you can get up a baseline, assuming that it's meeting their base standards. It's 31%. Reimbursable costs. It can grow up to 68% reimbursable costs going all out. But again, that's the design of the community and the requirements that you're checking those boxes. But again, you may not check any of the boxes and not get 31%. So it would not behoove the process to say, adjust that down by 30%, saying, well, we'll probably meet the baseline when we really don't know. But at the same time, to your point, something of this nature, when you're in this part of the process, it can be adjusted in the years a little bit. And then to the other point, when you do an outlay for major constructions, like public safety, school renovations of these natures, You don't issue all at once. Back to what we were saying before, where you would issue as you need those construction costs to get through those next phases. So you may do a 10, 15, $20 million borrowing in one year, and then do another one the following year as it comes out. It gives that smoothing effect to the taxpayer. And there are actual legal ramifications to holding cash. You're not supposed to be making money off of bonds. So you're not supposed to even do that, even outlay it full on. So absolutely, it will be smoother than what you're seeing here. When rubber hits the road, we outlay as cash is needed.
If I could just add on to that, and I think one of John's upcoming slides is going to illustrate this as well. This graphic is somewhat misleading in the sense that by the very nature that it's borrowed funds, take the $60 million, $65 million police station, that's not going to hit in 1 year. That's going to be spread over 30 years, right? So there is still, the question is still a really important one, and John's talking about how we can further mitigate the peaks, so the beginning borrowing, because it does start higher, and the way the town borrows typically, although we have choices here too, typically we pay declining debt. So year one is your highest total debt service, and then it gradually declines from there. But again, this illustration appropriately shows when the borrowing is authorized, but not how it's going to hit the tax bills and not the annual debt service, but the future charts will show that better.
Yep. So this slide you've seen before in the past. Again, this is what's currently on the books as far as the debt service. And there's this $15 million target there that's saying, this is our target area of $15 million that we would like to see pay out on debt service over time. As you can see, it's a declining schedule. You can see what's authorized, current, authorized but unissued. So if you just take a look at that top line, you can see if we were to issue everything and do all the capital projects, right now that's on the books, that's where the schedule is. The next slide is going to, because you saw those $150 million project, the $65 million capital project, the next slide is going to jump really high because it's going to stack on top of that. So that's what it looks like. So it looks like as if it were to go out all at once, scream up really high, this is what that would look like from total debt service, authorized but unissued, over the time. And again, this is assuming we do the full outlay, no grant-supported funding. This is all of those things. So again, this is those worst-case scenarios. But again, this is just showing you what that looks like over time.
And one question here. The $15 million target, that's self-put? I mean, that's...
Correct.
There's no, other than that's what we're shooting for, requirement for that.
Right. So the town had a long history of limiting borrowing so that any borrowing that was introduced could be done without increasing the tax burden. That was the 15 million. As we've been saying for a couple of years now with the capital plan that we're looking at, if we do if we do less than half of the projects on the plan, we're not going to be able to stay within that 15 million. But for many years we did, right? And that was part of, we had 10 years between extensions of the sewer plan because the target was to stay within the below the $15 million total debt service.
Okay, thank you.
So just looking at those projects again, these are the new debt service pieces coming on board. The new total debt, not including wastewater, the new total debt with wastewater. Again, stack charts. It's that area above, just sort of spread out, and you can see the difference in pieces right here. Now, this is the slide that is really telling. When you're looking at the cumulative, that's what we've been looking at over time is cumulative dollars, right? Cumulative tax impact. This is going to show that impact as far as a tax rate change, right? So what does that mean in real life? Well, in real life, that if you're going to accumulate everything over time, that's how much it would be on the top. On the bottom of that graph is those year-over-year as that issuance were to come on, so in FY29, that's why you see it spike up. Again, the numbers that you would see on that bottom line, year-over-year change, would be much smoother than what you're seeing here. And again, I will restate it, is that this doesn't take into account reimbursable costs. This is total project costs. So it grows. Yes, the debt service is going up. It spikes up very quickly right there, and then it plateaus. Because you're seeing that, and as Peter mentioned before, was that it has a declining debt service schedule. So it's coming down while some other pieces are coming up. So you're seeing that offset, that actual change year over year by each issuance flatten out. Again, it would be much smoother than this because we would be doing many more issuances rather than just one issuance for these large dollar amounts. It smooths those lines out.
And just to confirm, this is for capital projects. This doesn't factor in any of our operating budget deficits, correct?
This is just factoring in purely capital, $3 million, the bondable projects as listed before.
So for tax impacts, if I'm thinking about this in totality, we have every year 2.5% plus this, plus if we have overrides for the operational budget, it would be those three pieces would be going together.
Of those revenue sources listed, and then other revenue sources that change over time would be the state grant funding and things of that nature, which would also help push those costs down as those increase. And then obviously there's operational costs that management can look at and sort of become more efficient.
Okay, thank you.
So this would be the impact as far as the dollars, and as that would be concerned for the cents and the dollars that would change. This would be as to the median single-family property. So the cumulative impact, you can see how it comes up, and again, this is not smoothed out. This would be assuming all debt comes on, and it comes out to that 1,000, and then it becomes that per issuance cost, and that's why it's flatter. And again, it would be much smoother than what is being listed right now. But this is again, those dollars, this is the dollars. This is, people don't think about it in terms of a couple cents on their assessed value or things of that nature. They think about this piece here. So again, the change year over year would be this.
Can I just ask you, can you clarify for that, the cumulative, are you implying that we're never actually going to feel the effects of the cumulative because we're going to moderate it with the per impact? I don't really understand this slide.
Yeah, so the total dollars of a single, as the assessed value right here, right? Your dollar that would be $150 the first year, and then the next year on top of that 150 would have been the difference between the two. So we're stacking the cumulative debt service. So the debt service is just the total dollar of debt service outlaid at that time, and then put in dollar terms, and it's just taking it on versus just in issuance, right? So that $150 million that we're looking at from FY29, and you add that one plus 28 debt service, and then that's how you get 2030. You're kind of going on and you're just including those debt services. Every single issue adds on to the prior one.
All right, so if I could go on, early on in your presentation, there was some pages that we kind of blew past, which I found kind of concerning, was the total cumulative impact of the tax. And I thought I saw somewhere by the next 20 years, it's up to a 50% increase over where it's at now. Am I understanding that correctly?
Something.
I don't know if that's a page that you developed. It's page 63, I believe.
63.
He's talking about the PDF.
Oh.
Yeah.
I can look into that. If as far as changed by year one currently, assuming everything in by the end, what the change in
Yeah, it
dollars?
shows in the red the deficit for 28 is $5,658,000.
Oh, you're looking at the future projections?
Correct.
That page?
Yeah.
So the future projections, That is just, it's taking into account, and again, I didn't build a lot of the projections.
I understand.
So I really can't speak to exactly how those were built. I
Okay.
know that I personally love building projections out using confidence intervals and lower bounds to those confidence intervals. So you get a good conservative future look. I haven't had a lot of time to get into those pieces on out years yet. I apologize.
Understandable, certainly.
So if I'm understanding correctly, the overall impact, in the year 20, if all the tax increases relative to capital borrowing over the 9-year period would total approximately $1,100?
That is correct.
So at the end of it, that would be what someone had paid on an average or a median price for 8 years prior leading
Correct.
up to.
That's a great way to say it, yes.
And am I correct that the median assessed value doesn't change? I think I had this question once before, so when we're looking at the tax impact, we're still talking about a $749,000 median house here in Falmouth?
That's correct.
Even in 2037, that's the number we're using for that slide.
For forecasting, we do not change the median value, but just bear in mind, if we did, then the rate would go down accordingly, and the total tax dollar bills would not change.
Right. Yeah, okay. Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
So I have a question. I mean, I keep going back to that spike, because when you look in particular at this graph and the other one of debt service over time, right? By 2031, we've basically stabilized. There's a little bouncing around, but we've basically stabilized. So what we're looking at is, in my mind, is a 3-year problem, not a 10-year problem. Although maybe we can spread that out, right? It's
Right.
these 3 years of that steeply escalating tax impact, which is really driven by a very small number of very large projects, some of which have some uncertainty in them.
Right.
One question I have in looking, and again, recognizing some of this is in is in the projections that you haven't necessarily had a chance to dig into from the operating budget, but is how we think about the use of the capital and debt stabilization fund. And what's in some of those projections is using like $2 million a year in some of those out years. And I guess my question is, should we be considering a heavier use of the capital and debt stabilization fund in these early years? We've got $17 million in there right now. Since we have this 10-year outlook, we have a good sense of what's coming, and we know where that pain point is. How should we be thinking about the use of those funds?
And that was what I was really driving at, the question I asked before. I mean, that $650 or whatever it is in FY29, is there any way that we can get that amount lower and, kind of equalize it in those 3 years so that the big hit doesn't come in FY 2029 when we're looking at an almost $700 increase?
Yes, those are all decisions that can be made. There's some that are already set and moving forward, like the library, for example. The large school project, again, they're at that process right now, so there's not a perfect timeline. Part of my job is really to focus in on how we do issuances and ensure that it makes the most sense at the least cost. And then as far as breaking these projects up and moving them, again, these are management decisions on that one too. But as far as other uses and sources of funds, the debt stabilization fund, there are all great options to doing it. You hold on more cash in order to keep a higher bond rating. That's really great. That's important to have. Or you use it to mitigate the outlay at the very beginning to lower your debt service payments. Also a good option to have. Things to bear in mind, and I'm building it right now, is that there are policies, and again, policies are guidelines and directives that we should stay within. Auditors will, if you get out of those guardrails for a little bit, they just say, hey, what is the plan to get back into the guardrails really quickly, right? So when you have the debt stabilization or any other types of these funds that have a policy threshold, we need to be taking that into account as well. So as operational costs increase, and then you have these percentages according to these budget outlays out years, we need to be taking into consideration a transfer into those stabilization funds and not out. So all things that need to be wrapped in together and decided as you build a capital plan budget and these outlays and these future budget years.
One more?
Yeah, go ahead.
With all of this borrowing, do you foresee, or would it be conceivable that our bond rating might change because of how much we are borrowing and going forward? So, I mean, we've had a wonderful bond rating up to this point, but I'm just wondering if there might be a negative to all this borrowing we need to do.
Great question. John, you want to take a stab?
I'll take a stab at it. Okay. So S&P, they have actual guidelines as far as how they're going to calculate your bond rating. Things of liquidity, the ability to pay. So if you are doing these debt excluded dollars, that's looked at much more favorably than a non-debt. So it's held into the general fund and it's pressed across everybody. And it's part of that tax levy against the debt, the Prop 2.5 increase. So those pieces are vital when it comes to the bond rating. Liquidity, general liquidity in the background. How much cash do you hold on hand is vital to it. Growth, population, all these pieces play into account. But also one of those things is management. Is management forecasting, looking, and taking into account these questions? The questions that we're asking tonight are the questions that need to be asked and raised rather than just going out and just doing these. We are looking at it intently, and we have analysis to it, everything that we're doing. So to the question, yes, it may. However, with that being said, there are other opportunities where it may not. So it's a lot, but at the same time, there are options here that we can mitigate that problem.
Mr. Reed?
So a couple concerns here. One, again, I'm going to say this. I think we're looking at this in isolation. We have tax impacts that are going to be not just on the capital plan, but also on the operating budget and on others. So looking at this in totality would, I think, be very beneficial to the taxpayer and to us who have to answer to them. So when you look at the Excel spreadsheet, we have everything commingled. Large projects and vehicles, roads and other things, and it lends itself to as if everything is the same weight. So I know you're brand new into this. I look at the document as it's intended to represent all of our capital needs, and because we haven't talked about any alternatives, it seems that we're being told this is what we can afford. And we're going to go to the taxpayers with this. So I'm going to ask a question that I think was asked during your interviews, which we got a little bit of it from Mr. Renshaw just now, is how do we turn, and I think this kind of goes along with what Mr. Brown has asked for many times, how do we take this almost $1 billion of capital projects and put them into an affordable, prioritized capital investment plan that can coexist with our structural operating budget challenges that we have? Because right now we're only looking at one small piece, right? It's a big piece, but it's one piece of the overall budget. So can you talk about what you've done in your past? I think you were at Dedham and you created a capital budget prioritization plan, and you've been here for four weeks. What do we need to do to get there?
So there's a lot of work on my spot to do a lot of this analysis. The operating budget, again, I got to dig into it to see where the operating costs are going as we're talking about just the operating budget and where the tax levy and where the ceiling is. I can see that there are operational pieces that are built into the tax levy that could potentially come out and be part of a enterprise fund to sort of mitigate some of those woes. So I personally am a fan of costs that are borne by the users of those costs when it comes to some types of services. So obviously, there are a lot of services that need to be borne by all. I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that, but I'm saying that when you have utilities in particular that have a mechanism in accounting and in Massachusetts that works very, very, very well, we should be leaning into those things. So we operationally work and budget for those items much, much better. So yes, I see things that are potentially will alleviate the future out years when it comes to the next year's budget cycle, taking into account whatever goes to the taxpayers as far as the plan. And again, the plan has ability to move and fluctuate and does take into account the higher costs.
Can I say something real quick? Excuse me, John. So it's like our Vice Chair Reed, in response to your question, so the purpose of tonight was to give a more in-depth examination year by year of the capital debt load. We picked $1 million projects and up to illustrate that. Our next presentation, John is, if you all recall back in, I think it was May, when John's predecessor presented the spreadsheet and looked at operational costs as well. We're going to go back to that. We just, for tonight's purposes, because we're going to be transmitting the capital plan, the FY27 capital plan, we wanted to give kind of this holistic, comprehensive look, not only at the FY27 plan, but also the outlying years over the course of the 10-year plan. Really looking at those larger capital projects, the bondable projects. But we are planning on coming back and showing again the impacts both on the capital spend side as well as the operational side. But for tonight, because we're going to be asking, if not tonight, then on the 17th of August next week, for the Select Board to vote to transmit the FY27 capital budget to the Finance Committee. So we're really focusing this presentation on, again, those larger capital projects and how they impact the taxpayer over time, over the 10-year plan.
Ms. Klein and then Mr. Brown.
Okay.
That was like a cue up there, Mr. Renshaw, because I spent some time with that chart, right, where it's all laid out for the next 10 years. And I was just looking at what's in fiscal year 27, 28, and so on. And I have a couple of questions. One item that I saw is not listed, and I'm wondering if I just missed it, is the possibility of the combined fire station for West and North Falmouth. I'm asking about that not because I'm advocating for the project for or against, but simply it has shown on previous lists, and it does not show, not that I could find, in the next 10 years. I'm
sorry.
I'm just imagining that there's some residents, right? We had this discussion about CPC funding to try and keep the West Falmouth Fire Station habitable for the time being, and if we have neglected to include pursuing that topic in the future, I think that is to the detriment of the residents. And again, if I've missed it, my apologies, but I did not see it listed.
So under facilities,
what page?
I'm sorry. I'm looking at the 10-year plan, and it's listed under page 58. Sorry, thank you. Yeah, I have a separate attachment. I'm sorry. Page 58. We do show carrying land acquisition cost of $1 million, and what is that? FY. FY29. In design, and $950,000 in design costs for that consolidated Northwest Corridor station.
Okay.
Also in FY29.
When will we have an opportunity then to discuss those projects that are not the capital budget that we're transmitting this evening or next Monday? Because, you know, my first thought is if we think we're going to buy a lot of land for $1 million, that we could build a large enough fire station on in that part of town. I think that we are mistaken in that regard. And I also have questions about, for example, over the 10 years, the amount spent on roads and sidewalks is accelerating and it's increasing year over year. And I'm just wondering if there's a reason for that. And so I guess I'm maybe like Mr. Reed, struggling with when is the time to ask some of these questions that I have that are,
Tonight.
okay. Great.
We're reviewing the 10-year plan, so this is part of the
Excellent.
process over the past couple of meetings, and there will be more. But tonight is that time to ask those questions about program year. You know, is it FY29 the correct program year, the prioritization? There's a lot of detail provided in the project sheets that are included in your packet that the departments have provided, and then again is that collaborative process between Peter, myself, and the department heads putting those detail sheets together. But yet tonight, next Monday on the 17th, asking those questions, it's important. And we've talked in the recent past about having a community meeting where we're trying to get a better sense from the community in terms of prioritization. We talked about one tonight with regards to fields. Is that a priority of this select board in terms of enhancing the quality of our athletic fields and athletic amenities? I get a lot of emails from residents wanting to invest more heavily in parks, in athletic fields. So that's a policy decision that the select board needs to give guidance, and I can give recommendations. We had one tonight that recommended improvements to the Codgers baseball field. Mm-hmm. But whether that going forward over the next 9 years of the plan is a priority.
Yes, Mr. Brown.
And so that's exactly what I was going to bring up, is that this is the role of the select board, I believe, is to prioritize the political will of the town and not send things to the finance committee that we're not really supportive of. And I don't think right now that we're in a position to be ready to build a new fire station, honestly. And so I was going to make the suggestion tonight that we take out the money for the study, take out the money for the acquisition and the, everything to do with the combined station, because I just feel like we're not in a position to be able to successfully move that forward in the next several years, really.
So Madam Chair, if I could respond to that. Select Board Member Brown, as you know, and there's money in this budget request for a study that's going to evaluate the siting based on call volume, response times. Mm-hmm. Having an outside consultant give us that, and again, to be able to make data-driven decisions. Until we have that, I don't think the McGraw study that was done 5-6 years ago went into enough detail with regards to response times. So really looking forward to doing that study, and that will inform our decision going forward whether we keep this, whether that makes sense to construct a combined station and go to a 5-station model versus the 6-station model that we're currently operating under.
Well, I understand the concept, and it's certainly a valid concept and a good planning tool, but if we don't have the money, what's the point? And if we could just take a few things off this long-range capital plan, I think it'd be more manageable for everybody. Maybe we could spend that money on fixing the roof on the rec center and some other more practical things.
So operationally, it's becoming more and more of a challenge, as you all know, with the 6-station model and the current staffing levels of the fire rescue department to bring a minimum staffing of 16 on a day-to-day basis. So that becomes an operational kind of a challenge for us, continuing to operate in a 6-station model. Now, whether the recommendation from the study says that makes the most sense based upon geography and staffing levels, but that's the information that I'd like a consultant to help gather that data and give us some direction.
Well, and then another thing that we should think about is, I think we're being maybe a little too aggressive. Want to completely renovate the Lawrence School. Maybe that's something that should be also deferred. I mean, if we put new HVAC systems in there to replace that old steam boiler, we could do that at our own expense. We wouldn't be beholden to MSBA to knock down all the block walls and increase the classroom sizes. I know it's not ideal, but I think we need to try to start getting more creative about how we can reduce this capital budget overall.
So I think I'll say two things. I mean, with both the fire station and with the Lawrence renovation, we are currently in processes to decide what the end shape of those projects will be, mm-hmm. right? And so what is in this, the way I view what is in this extended 10-year plan is our current best estimate and some placeholders, right? And that's really important for looking at viability and thinking about the pacing of the really large projects that are the bondable projects that drive tax ramifications for Falmouth residents, for taxpayers. That is somewhat distinct from what we are on a timeline to transmit to FinCom, which is the FY27 capital request, right? And obviously having that 10-year context is really important for thinking about whether FY27 is right-sized, but they are also distinct, right? So I think it's important to have those placeholders there for Lawrence, for the fire station, but we're looking at, we're gonna do the analysis to figure out what would be the right fire station model, and then we can tackle the question of, okay, how do we get to what would be the right fire station model? And we've got a placeholder in there with our best estimate of what Lawrence School renovation would cost, and we have a school building committee that's starting to meet, and we'll be going through that process to figure out what is the appropriate approach to that building, and those numbers will change over time, but that's not what we're transmitting to FinCom this week or next week.
We are transmitting the 75,000, right?
Yes, to do the assessment.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. And I guess I would say I agree and disagree with your assessment of the role of this board. I think our role as the executive branch is to provide clear strategic goals and direction and to hold accountability to those, and we do that through the strategic plan and through these conversations. Our role is to take a look at this big picture in the long term and the tax ramifications and figure out where there are obstacles and opportunities and levers and creative ways to think about this and policies that are needed to point things in the right direction. But I don't know that line by line audit of every vehicle purchase is necessarily where the select board needs to be spending most of our time and focus.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the big things that we can talk about, that we can mitigate some of this expense that's going to be coming up quickly.
So another, if I may, and then I'll stop. So another great example, on the first page of the 10-year plan, you'll see beginning in FY29, FY28, so next fiscal year of the capital plan, $10 million over 5 consecutive years for building improvements, and that was a direct result of that comprehensive building study that we had done. And I'm just saying, for years, the town of Falmouth has not invested, in my opinion, enough to maintain the current facilities, and we're paying for some of that now. I'll use the police station as a great example.
Yeah.
So that $10 million investment spread over five years from 28 through 32 should be ripe for discussion. Is that enough? That's based upon Greg Endicott and Peter McConerty taking a look at the overall building condition study that was done and trying to program that out so that we don't overstretch our resources. But that's a great discussion to start having. Is that going to be enough? And I'm going to ask Greg Endicott to come in probably at one of the first meetings in September and provide the board an overview of that dashboard and that report. You see bits and pieces of it in the monthly updates that I send out every month in the facility section. It's going to be a very valuable tool for the select board and us as management to help, again, identify those buildings and facilities that are most critically in need of improvements and repair.
Right,
so that we're not putting a new hardwood court down without repairing the roof over the top of it.
Certainly, but my point is also, I've been honestly asking for over a year to have a workshop specifically about this 10-year capital plan and taking some of the stuff out of it, divest some of the buildings, talk about the things rather than just the status quo that we got to continue to maintain it. Maybe there's buildings that we don't need that we're replacing the roof on. That's what I want to talk about.
Yes, Mr. Reed, and then I know we have multiple members of the public here who may want to comment as well.
I think I'm going to second what Mr. Brown is asking for. As the person with probably the least amount of extra time, I think we do need this type of review. I think it's good that we have the comprehensive building study, But as you've also noted, we have many other studies underway. I think if we can merge these together to then create a game plan of priorities and discuss, maybe it's something that we let fall into the ocean because we don't need it anymore, a building of some kind, and we can better use our research. We lack that discussion and plan as policy setters to then be able to back you up with the decisions that you make. Right now, we're given a very long list, a list that is not a plan. It's just a listing. It changes. There are things that are added, things that are moving, things that are that disappear. And I don't think our strategic plan has helped you appropriately with where we need to go with this. I would also tie into the bigger local comprehensive plan. We don't have direction as a board right now to be able to tell you, this meets our goals, or this doesn't meet our goals, or this should go away, or this doesn't go away, because we haven't had this comprehensive view. We're getting it in bits and pieces, and I don't think 60 minutes tonight, it's the first bite of many, and I think I will again second the request of a multi-day, multi-phased approach looking at $1 billion of capital plans, but also a way to look at it with the deem of affordability. No one has yet identified for me how we are determining that this is all affordable, other than, well, we'll let the taxpayers decide. I feel like we can do some homework there too. So I'm going to bring it back in. Madam Chair, we have a job tonight where we are looking at 2027, ultimately in isolation against everything else right now, to transmit to the Finance Committee. So what do we need to discuss tonight for the 2027 stuff?
Oh, I think we're going to vote on it next on the 17th, right, ultimately.
Yeah,
that's our deadline.
That is the absolute deadline.
And I guess my question to my colleagues is, this is great discussion. It's something that's absolutely necessary. I think this select board and management is way ahead of what has been done in the past with respect to looking 10 years out. But I mean, what are your issues with what we need to do, which is to move this to FinCom? It's a great discussion, but are you suggesting that we're not in a position to move this forward to FinCom because of all these concerns, or you just want to register your very valid points so that we can, address these going forward, prioritize, and so forth? And I think, Mr. Reed, a plan is a plan. You say it's a list, it's not a plan, but, a plan comes and goes, and things get added and things get taken away, just like they do with a budget. So, all of your concerns, I think, are very valid and necessary, but, the job before us right now is to move this forward so that the Finance Committee can take a look at it and move it to town meeting. So, I think the discussion has been very helpful, and again, I compliment the town manager and staff for directing us. Which Mr. Renshaw said over a year ago that this was something that we were looking at, some pretty large capital expenditures going forward. So, great discussion, but I think we need to focus on what we need to do tonight or on the 17th.
Do you want to open it up for public comment if there's anyone?
Sure.
Sorry, Ms. Klein, I'm sorry.
I just had a question specifically about the police station. And I asked this via email, but I imagine there was not time. Could not find in my notes, but I had the memory that at some point after the last police station advisory committee presentation to this board, that I was informed via email that after a discussion at that meeting, they had adjusted the budget of that project and back down to $55 million. And I'm wondering if I am, like some of our AI chatbot friends, hallucinating that conversation or those notes, because the number listed in the plan is still at $65 million.
So I'm not sure. Let me just start with the answer to your questions. I'm not sure. My takeaway from the last select board meeting and police station advisory committee meeting was that There are clear concerns about the cost and a desire to look at a lower cost for the project. And we had begun to talk at the Police Station Advisory Committee about what that lower dollar amount target might be. And then Chief Laurie and Boyd DeMello, the chair of the committee, came up with a great idea to have the select board members in groups of 1 or 2 to go through the plan in much greater detail to make sure that you had a really solid, in-depth understanding of why the facility the proposed facility is sized the way it is. And so we, town manager and I and the project team discussed, let's put a pin in it for now and see what the outcome of those conversations was. I don't think we ever settled on a $55 million number, but we have been talking about, hearing this board talk about, well, can you give us an option that is a lower cost? And that is something that, having now finished with the individual meetings that you had, we need to get together as a group, and the town manager and I and the chief have had some initial conversations about what that might look like. So we don't have a final answer, but we do plan to come back with some sort of options for looking at a smaller sized or lower cost facility.
And I just have a real quick comment to add on to what Peter just said. And my instruction was to look functionally at the use of space when we're looking at making reductions to the existing floor plan, how it's laid out. And I know each of you last week went through those one-on-one meetings. Looking functionally at the use of space and making recommendations, and I'll use an example, the outbuilding that we've been talking about, and there's value to that outbuilding and storage and protecting some of the equipment. Is it necessary at $2 million, or is it something we phase in? The community meeting space, training room, that's another 2,200 square foot portion of the building that perhaps, my goal is to bring back to the select board and town meeting some options and looking at the functional, not arbitrarily picking a number, but looking at the functional use of space and showing the trade-off. If the community wants a department that has training facilities internal to the building where they can address on a timely basis any performance deficiencies of the staff, that's important. If that's important to the community, then that needs to stay in the building. So offering those kind of options and trade-offs in different scenarios. But we never, as Peter said, I don't think we ever landed on a number. It's more looking at making reductions of particular spaces in the facility.
So process question, if we, let's just say tonight, voted to approve the transfer of this over to the Finance Committee, it would go with us with the 65 plus $5 million price tag. Are you saying that we could come in under that afterwards?
Yeah, we almost always do.
Almost always do.
That's, whenever you do municipal budgeting, you go higher than expected because you don't want to fall short because it takes so long to get the funding back in place.
I just worry that when we say you have $70 million, you're going to build right to $70 million, contrary to what we've just discussed. Because prior to that, I guess, since we're talking about the police station, I'm hesitant to move it forward. We have another week to discuss, but I do appreciate that Mr. Renshaw and Mr. Johnson-Saab and the police chief and Mr. DeMello invited us to take the time, and I want to thank them because it was very, very informative. It's unfortunate that it happened in the 9th inning and not the 1st inning, where we reviewed the programmatic needs of the department and the litany of reasons why the current facility doesn't work, and those are pretty hard to refute. But I think we, as our responsibility of the select board, our collective responsibility is to ensure that the project that we ultimately ask the taxpayers to fund is appropriately sized and financially sustainable and based on assumptions that are well supported that also support community needs. I think we've found variances in population statistics and demographic statistics, and this is a governance question, and our job is to balance public safety with affordability and community priorities. So I'm happy to continue this conversation. If it was going to come to a vote tonight, I would have asked to keep that to remove this from the budget until we can have those discussions. Since we're not taking, it's my understanding, we're not taking the vote tonight. I don't have to worry about that. But I think we need,
But we will be taking that vote no later than next week. And I don't think we're going to have those answers that you're looking for with regard to the police station between now and next week.
Madam Chair?
So,
If I may, exactly on that point, Colin makes a great, raises a really important question. And because the timing of this particular project is lined up for a vote in April and not for a vote in October, we do have extra time. So my suggestion is going to be that when we bring this back next week, that the plan that we ask the select board to adopt has a dollar amount for the police station of TBD, because we're not going to be able to satisfy the board based on everything that we've talked about in the last couple of months. We have some more work to do to get board consensus on what that budget might be. I think we might need a month for that. We do need to get to it sooner than later, because we need to do that design work in order to be prepared for the April town meeting. But there is a path forward to get the Finance Committee going on reviewing 90% of the plan, or all of the plan that's going to be acted upon in October.
okay. All right, public comment. Yes, Mr. Walsh.
So for the record, Dan Walsh. John, can you go to slide 14? I'm going to ask a question because I just want to make certain the context for that upper line is clear. So what I didn't see in the presentation, what I'm guessing from doing some calculations, is what the term of the bonds are, what the rate of the bonds are, because when Peter had done this before, he had done a range. And this is one fixed line. It's not presenting a range of it could be this much, or it could be less, or it could be more. So what's the assumption here? Is this the most optimistic, meaning the lowest, or is this the highest, or where is that number coming from?
That's a great question. So similarly, I would look at the same type of calculator to determine those terms. So yes, you could do a low and a high range. I went to a higher dollar cost, and it would change depending upon what that cost outlay would be. So land improvement, building improvement, 30-year term. You can do an average of 5%, even though it would be a higher cost over time. You take the higher, more conservative number. Rather than providing a range and then doing these tops and bottoms, because that would skew it quite drastically over the top range, and even the ones so the numbers here are still higher, but it would well within his range on the top end of his range.
So roughly speaking, it's in the middle of the two?
No, it's higher than the middle. We'll say, I don't want to give a percentage,
Right,
but
so
definitely not like an average of all of the
It's
costs.
the more pessimistic of the two?
A more conservative.
It's pessimistic, but based in reality. Like it's a solid figure that it would come with it's a solid estimate.
Realistically pessimistic.
Correct.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes.
Liz Beardsley, Southview Way. Appreciated the select board's discussion tonight and trying to prioritize capital projects and understand all the factors. I think to select board member Klein's comment, there are a lot of good models from other municipalities if that's something that might be explored before next year's capital planning cycle, including consideration of climate mitigation and resilience and some of the other town plans and how things fit together. But I did have a specific question about the tax impacts and whether, I think there's one whole page of bond projects for wastewater, and whether when you looked at the tax impacts, if that accounts for betterments that are potentially going to be used for some of that.
I just looked purely at the total project cost and then bonding those pieces over time. It doesn't take into account betterments. It doesn't take into account grant funding or any of that.
So I think it's number maybe 17 that shows the tax impact. Yeah, that one. So that's probably a high end, because some of the betterment related bonds would not be townwide on property taxes? Okay.
Absolutely. Again, this would be the higher of the estimates. This is, again, a pessimistic, high-impact model right now.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Neto?
Is it possible for us to put together a model that does incorporate the betterments and the bonding and the grants and things that we might, to get that more
Is there
optimistic view?
a model that would take into account, I'm sorry, I missed it.
Is there a model that we could use that would take into account that 70% betterment reduced from the total?
You could definitely build a model of more likely outlays. But again, this is just a plan in general as of right now. But it would take time to incorporate a lot of those pieces. And there would be, as you start moving forward, there becomes more personal choice in outlays. For example, I'll just use it for something that everybody can understand is that $150 million outlay, well, you can issue $10 million, $15 million, $20, $25 million on that first issuance. But until you know what those costs are, until you know what the market is going to be, until you know those, they would be wildly variant on what that impact would be on that, what I would show. So I would kind of take a half step back and say, well, here's the project. You might split it into two, but I wouldn't want to get too granular.
Yeah, true, but the 70% betterment on a sewer project is a pretty big impact, so.
At the same time, that's something that this board votes for each of those projects, right? So it's not, it is a choice in the future. And so I personally would prefer to see the conservative estimates that we're seeing here. And I'll come back to a fact that, again, when we're in most of those wastewater projects, that's FY31 and onward, we're stable. That's not where the pinch point is. Yes, they're big numbers. We have a phased wastewater approach, and we're working our way through it. It's in those 3 years with a handful of big projects that we've got a pinch point that we need to figure out how to get through, in my mind. Mr. Neto.
Joe Neto, Precinct 9. I have a question and a comment in looking at the paperwork and the slides that have been done. On our sewer projects, they've always been very descriptive. We had the Woods Hole Main Street, then we had Falmouth Heights Little Pond, then we had New Silver Beach, then we have Teaticket Path, Falmouthport. So I'm looking at this, and I have no idea now what the Nantucket Sound Watershed Phase 1 construction is. And then the Nantucket Sound Watershed Phase 2. So why did we change the system that we were using to describe our sewer projects? Does anybody have an answer for that?
Yes. Hi, Joe. So we're just not there yet. You know, in the past, we, as I mentioned,
okay.
I'll answer your question. Just give me a minute. Now, let me give you an explanation. So in the past, these projects were often 10 or more years apart. And so there was a longer lead time. And in the past, they were planned to be spread out so that they could stay within, you know, without increasing taxes. Now we're in a different world because the DEP has said, you've got 20 years to get the whole thing done, or 25 years to get 75% of everything done. So we are now in the process of going through the permitting, going through the watershed management plan process. So there's a permit for each of those 14 nitrogen impaired watersheds.
Right.
We're going to get permits for all of those and then put together a comprehensive plan and determine which projects happen when. So absolutely well in advance, we're not going to go to town meeting and say, give us $80 million for Nantucket Sound. We're going to go to town meeting just like we have in the past and say, give us $80 million to put an expansion of the sewer collection system exactly in this place with this number of households. So that's coming. We just don't have it yet.
I mean, we only have 4 roads to do. Acapesca, Davisville, Central Avenue, and Seacoast Shores. There's 4 roads. There's 4 neighborhoods. I mean, because are we doing this, and we've worked from west to east, are we now thinking of like skipping a section because it would sewer more homes and give us a quicker result? Is that what if before it was a linear west to east, so now we're thinking about jumping over?
I'm not sure. I do know that the Wacoit Bay is severely impacted, and there's...
They all are.
So I don't know that we have an answer to that question yet.
Oh, okay, so that's the reason why they're non-descriptive. So we're going to do the rest of the sewer in 2 phases. That's what it's looking like, correct?
I don't know that that's been determined either, but for now, we put in dollar amounts based on the total area that is planned to be sewered and spread them out in an approximate way, but there's a lot more work to be done to determine exactly when we're going to do and where and how big each of the next handful of projects will be.
The comment I have is something that Mr. Brown said that I think makes a lot of sense. And I think this is year 8 in that combined station for Western North Falmouth. In all reality, we all know we don't have the money to do that. And I think I heard you say that there was $1 million to buy property in that section of town. That's what's planned. And that's the most expensive property in Falmouth, Western North Falmouth. I think you should help yourselves out and either scratch that. Comment is, I don't think town meeting supports a 1 station for that section of town. I think you'll find that the taxpayers in town meeting want to come in. You can have all the studies, consultants you want. That's the way the people feel. I think that's the mood of town meeting.
So don't gather the data and don't make informed decisions.
Well, the data, Mr. Renshaw, the way the streets run in that section of town, there's 3 east-west roads, 151 Thomas Landers and Brick Hill, and they're a couple miles apart. The streets are north-south. There's nursing homes, there's beaches there, and people want coverage.
And I think, Mr. Netto, we all want coverage, and what we need to do is with a new fire station in the mix, we need to go back and look at how we make sure that we have both the staff that we need in the places that we need to make sure that we have the fastest response times. And that's the goal of
the town of Falmouth will always provide staff for public safety. Again, that's my opinion.
Do we have anyone else for public comment? Okay. I believe I have heard from the board that the consensus is to wait on this 1 more week for a transmittal vote. Is that okay? Are there specific questions or additional information that the board would like to see prior to that vote next week, or is this time to think about it?
What else can we take off the list? Is there anything that's not absolutely essential? I don't know. That'd be my own.
I might put that question back to this board, that if you have specific thoughts on what needs to change. We have the best efforts of town management and our department heads in front of us, and some revisions already made. So if there are specific ideas, please share those with town management as soon as possible. Yes, Ms. Klein.
I appreciate Mr. Johnson-Staub's suggestion to include a TBD expense for the police station, because I do not feel comfortable voting that dollar amount.
Okay. That's good feedback. Anything else on the capital plan for tonight? Okay. If not, thank you very much, Mr. Arnett, for jumping into the deep end. And this was, I will say, I found the graphs, the various presentations of the 10-year picture extremely helpful to think about where we do have challenges and also opportunities and what we need to be thinking about. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, we will move on to discuss proposed articles for the October 26th annual town meeting, beginning with the planning board articles, and I believe that's over to you, Mr. Corner. Yes, go for it.
Good evening, everyone. For the record, Judd Cornock, the Community Development Director. I'm just going to put in a presentation. So bear with me while I get this loaded. There we are. So as you know, in the item report for tonight, there are 4 town meeting articles proposed by the planning board. I'll go through each one of them quickly and answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you.
So the first is to address and make technical corrections to the bylaw. So as you can imagine, over time, things change, references become outdated, and things need to be corrected. So I think that this article sort of speaks for itself, especially for the first item here on the screen section. Well, essentially throughout the entire bylaw, we will correct the reference to the select board. Previous reference in the zoning bylaw said Board of Selectmen. We'll, of course, make that change to Select Board, and Natural Resources Department is now Marine and Environmental Services. A couple of other examples just highlighted in yellow where a reference is incorrect and simply just needs to be updated.
So, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, sorry.
So it's not really Article 1, it's, which article is it actually?
Right, so this, just for clarity, thank you, Doug. Article 1 is simply for the planning board. These were the presentations that I provided to the planning board at their public hearing. They opened it on July 28th. They will meet tomorrow evening to continue the public hearing, at which time they will essentially vote to submit any of the articles to the select board's office, so you can consider them at your Monday meeting, August 17th, to execute the warrant.
So which article should I be actually looking at?
Mr. Brown, in our packet, it's Article 17.
Okay, thank you.
Apologies. So again, just making onward with technical corrections. The first one on the screen, it just referenced the old way we referred to definitions. We categorized them. It's just relic text that just needs simply to be deleted. And the same with the next section is to essentially correct a reference in error. Same with number 5. Any questions on the technical corrections? Okay. Article 2, or the second article that the planning board is considering, is allowing duplexes in town by special permit in the residential zoning districts by the planning board.
And just to clarify, that's tentative Article 18 on the warrant.
Sorry. Any questions on that? So, apologies. So it looks like there might be a question.
How does this play into the state legislation that's floating around?
Well, the state legislation that I'm aware of would allow duplexes by right in every one of the town's single-family residence districts. This would be in conflict of that. So this would allow it by special permit. That legislation, if it passes, would essentially override this and would allow all of those duplexes to be allowed by right. No special permit required.
So if we adopted this and the legislature approves and the governor signs, or that law just wouldn't be effective anymore?
Yes, so state law would override what we just did with a
Just like
special
we
permit.
did with the ADU law.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Given the water superintendent's negative referral on this, have you reconsidered the position?
Me personally, I don't get involved in
I shouldn't
reconsidering
ask
that.
of you.
But the planning board, I think, yes. I think the planning board tomorrow night is going to have a long conversation about this article and the expansion of.
Now that you brought it up, Mr. Brown, I'm going to make a statement here with respect to that report. I think it was overstepping what administration should be doing. I think such a memo that went to the planning board should have come to this board first. This was a policy issue, and I'm very upset, frankly, that the way it played out and that memo went to the planning board without, we didn't know about it. I mean, we read about it in the Enterprise. We got a copy of the memo the day before it appeared in the Enterprise. So I think there's something seriously wrong when a town administrative official sends something like that, which implicates a lot of policy issues that this board is responsible for, without addressing this board first.
Well, I don't know. If you're interested, I feel like he did a good job of giving us a heads up that there's a concern.
Yeah, but he didn't give us a heads up. He gave the planning board a heads up.
Well, they're the ones that was in front of them.
I think you're missing the point.
I think this is
with all due
probably a
respect.
discussion for another time, and we will have Mr. Lannon at our August 31st meeting to discuss water conservation measures and our water supply outlook, given that that did come up and there was information that has been conveyed variously to the planning board or via the newspaper that we had not yet seen regarding the future of our water supply. And I think we'll leave that discussion of that issue for August 31st.
I'll be happy to do that, but if I could, this just reminded me of something else that we talked about many times in all of our strategic planning missions, which relates back to the budget, which was, I've been advocating now for quite a while that we should be removing irrigation from public water use. That's another $25 million item in our capital plan to rebuild Fresh Pond and the other wells there that we might not need if we didn't use fresh water for irrigation. So just throwing it out there.
No, and entirely true, right? We have a capital plan that's built on current policy, and if that changes, it will need to change in accordance.
Right.
Ms. Klein?
Has the planning board considered the suggestion, I'm sure you're aware from Ms. Moynihan from Falmouth Housing Trust, to consider special permit only for new construction and allow renovation by right? Because the special permit process essentially, it excludes by being expensive, right? So you generally incur a lot of upfront cost when it comes to applying for a special permit. And I just wondered if the board had considered that suggestion in any way.
Thank you for the question. Yes, they have, and they will continue that conversation tomorrow night. Ms. Moynihan's letter was presented to them on the 28th when they opened the hearing, and there have been some considerations of that, yes.
Appreciate that, thank you.
Of course. And if I may just take a moment to, own some of that memo, because the planning board, through their public hearing, is an opportunity to hear from staff related to specifically the impacts to the town related to development, future development. And as you may know, back in 2021, when the mixed residential and commercial overlay district was originally approved, there was, let's say, a lack of communication with the Department of Public Works. So we wanted to make sure that during the public hearing process, I personally wanted to make sure that infrastructure was considered when we thought about expansion. And I completely understand Mr. Muscala, your perspective here. It just, I don't want Mr. Lannon to bear the entire brunt of that decision. I asked for that as well.
No, I understand, Jed, and I understand the process. I just think that it was such an important issue and such an important memo that was sent that I would have appreciated this board being in the loop with it. That's all.
Of course. Noted, understood, and we will do in the future, for certain. Any other questions on the duplexes bylaw? Done. Okay. The next article is to make adjustments to Article 10, which is Article 10 of the zoning bylaw. That is the non-conforming structures, uses, and lots component. There are two sections within that current bylaw that are essentially incorrect. The first, as you can see on the screen, we're proposing to delete this language altogether because it allows the ZBA to do something that they can't legally do by a special permit. That would be a variance, as shown on the screen. So essentially, we're striking that language and not allowing that to proceed under a special permit It would simply be a variance. Lot shape and size, same component. Again, the current language would allow for the ZBA to make that change by a special permit. That's not allowed. It has to be a variance. Therefore, we're striking that language. And then lastly, this is the new text from the Affordable Homes Act that was passed this time 2 years ago. This essentially creates another layer in our non-conforming section for lots that are under common ownership. So this is, again, new state law. The exact language shown on the screen will be incorporated into our bylaw. Essentially what it says is under, previous operations, any time a property owner had two undersized lots that were commonly owned next to one another, they would essentially be merged for zoning purposes because it doesn't meet the minimum lot size. That is no longer the case. There's language here which essentially allows for, as long as those lots have at least 10,000 square feet and 75 feet of frontage, they're allowed to be built upon, provided that the future construction is a single-family home having no more than 1,850 square feet and no less than 3 bedrooms. Again, this language was taken exactly from state law, so we're just incorporating that into the bylaw. Questions on non-conforming?
I have one. Can you just give me a quick practical application of how this non-conforming Article 19 will impact a property owner?
All of it, or just this
Just
piece
say, for
here?
instance, we had recently a restaurant that wanted to be rebuilt back after a hurricane, and they had to get a special permit to rebuild. Would this no longer allow that type of?
No, that would not do that. So the first part, thank you for bringing that up. So this first strike, this language that we're striking here, or proposing to, allows the ZBA to take an existing non-conforming use, let's call it a restaurant, that's not currently allowed within that zoning district. If, say, that restaurant ceases to exist, they want to change it to another non-conforming use, let's call it a gas station. They can't, this language allows them to do that by special permit. That's not allowed. A non-conforming use, if a property owner wants to create a non-conforming use in a zoning district, that's a use variance. Those are typically not given because the purpose of a zoning bylaw is to outline what's allowed and what's not allowed in a particular area. Anytime someone's looking to utilize or create a use that's not allowed, they have to go through a special process. That's a use variance.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Seeing none? Okay, and the last article is the expansion, or the proposed expansion of the mixed residential and commercial overlay district. So this is a two-part amendment. Currently, the district has limitations. Mr. Netto is in the audience this evening. He was actually the person who originally decreased the size of the Mr. Cod district. And that is certain eligible locations that are overlaid over B1, B2, and BR districts that are also on the sewer system. So that reduced the expansive proposed Mr. Cod district in 2021 to a very small area, which is essentially downtown Main Street. This amendment essentially strikes that language, so we get rid of at certain eligible locations and simply just allow it to overlay all of the B1, B2, and BR districts, and it eliminates the reference to the map because that's no longer necessary. So if you bear with me, I will show you what that looks like. So on the screen, hopefully can everyone see that okay? Okay.
Can you zoom in at all?
We'll zoom out first, and then I'll take you in really carefully. So your current Mr. Cod district is located here, the shading of blue. All of these areas on the outside, which are labeled Area 1 through Area 21, are all these areas that would be eligible to be added to the mixed residential and commercial overlay district if this article were to pass. All right, so now I'm going to zoom in and just show you what the downtown area looks like. So this is essentially St. Barnabas at this area, and it stretches all of Main Street and up Davis Straits. That is your current Mr. Cod district. There are a few areas within this district, 18 through 21, which just happen to be within the Mr. Cod district, but not on the sewer. So they didn't qualify for both of those items, and therefore they weren't included in the Mr. Cod district. Under this amendment, they would be, as would all of the other areas shown here. So everything in red are areas in town where you have B1, B2, or BR zoning districts.
I have a question about that. I can understand the ones that are in the village centers and so forth, but section 4, wouldn't you think that's called like spot zoning just for a particular development?
I won't comment on how zoning amendments happened in the past, but there are some areas in town, in my opinion, that need to be rectified.
But that's not really in a business area, right?
Correct. So this area is actually Highfield Hall,
Right.
Area 4.
So why would that be in there?
It was, well, so because it's an eligible, so that's a B2 district. So anything that's zoned B2.
Highfield Hall is B2?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Oh,
Any-
right, because the conservatory.
Right.
There's conservatory, there's,
And so what would be the advantage then? We
there's
could,
the gym and the curling club.
so then that would be like potentially developed into a dense housing or something?
Correct. So under the Mr. Cod district, a property owner can develop their property up to 20 units per acre.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no limit on the amount of commercial if they do a mixed-use building. So you can have exclusively multifamily housing, or you can do a mixed-use development. And that's basically non-residential uses and residential uses together in one property. But the residential component can go up to 20 units per acre.
So if anybody thought that wasn't a good idea, that would have to be amended on town floor because it's all in one motion.
Correct.
All right.
So as I said, the planning board's going to be considering these articles tomorrow evening, based on the input that they received from Mr. Lanin and Mr. McGann related to wastewater impacts. I will be recommending to the planning board that they hold off on those two articles, the duplexes and the expansion of Mr. Cod, simply to allow us more time to understand, what those impacts might be, but also to, fingers crossed, knock on wood, dive into the local comprehensive plan update so that we can understand what the community is really looking for.
And what we can manage.
Correct.
Thank you.
And while we're on the topic of planning board, we have been working on as was requested by multiple members of the board, a joint meeting with the planning board. I don't know if we have that date confirmed yet.
I think we close September 14th.
September 14th.
Excellent. So we'll be meeting.
Mr. Cornock, could I ask you, what was the genesis of those two articles, the duplex as, when B1, so forth, and the expansion of the Mr. Cod?
So the duplexes article has been mentioned for many years. It's an outgrowth of the housing production plan, and it's been a topic of numerous meetings of the Affordable Housing Committee, but also the efforts of the housing coordinator and all of the separate sort of consortium meetings. There's been a movement to allow for duplexes by right throughout town for a while. The mixed residential expansion was a planning board initiated article.
I have a question, and maybe for town council or staff. I'm concerned about all these state mandates that keep coming down, and I wonder, is there any mechanism for us when we get something sent to us that we don't agree with, that we can opt out, or we have to sue them to maintain our independence? How do we do that? Is there a way?
I could probably give you an hour and a half long answer to that question. I'll try to be brief. Municipalities only have as much power as the legislature gives to us, and they can take it away equally as easily. of recent, you're seeing municipalities' zoning power erode at a very rapid rate. And there has been litigation about it. The MBTA litigation is a perfect example of municipalities pushing back and pushing back hard and losing in the zoning context. We are getting a flood of new legislation that is just doing away with all sorts of control by the ZBA and the planning board. And it's happening rapidly. And I do expect there to be some litigation from municipalities, but I don't see municipalities winning any of that litigation in any meaningful way. Maybe bits and pieces.
Is there any possibility that we would have like a class action lawsuit with a bunch of towns together?
So that's what happened with the not a class action as such, but with the MBTA litigation, multiple communities banded together and sued as collective plaintiffs. The most recent rounds of litigation were shocks to those in the municipal law community. The MMLA was never consulted. The MMA was not consulted. The laws are written poorly, and they are essentially stripping away all of the authority that we have.
Huh. Wow.
And it's, like I said, that the only reason we had that power in the first place was because the state gave it to us, and they can take it away.
I would say, Mr. Brown, you're not the only one on this board concerned about state mandates and our relationship there. I don't have it on a specific agenda yet, but multiple people either had ideas for ways for us to better track what's going on at the state level as it's being developed, so that we're not just in a responsive mode after it comes down. And that's something for this board to discuss at a future date, is how we accomplish that.
Might have to reconsider secession.
All right.
That is all I have. If you have any other
I think
questions.
that's all from the board. Thank you very much, Mr. Cornock.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Oh. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Walsh. Sorry, Mr. Cornock, you might not be done totally yet.
So I've talked to Dylan a couple of times, or his chief of staff. They're looking for ways to try to figure out how you carve out communities that are in the nitrogen-sensitive areas. So if you got ideas, they're looking for ideas. I keep trying to share ideas with them, and we go back and forth. But they're open-minded to trying to see if there's a way that they can write the law so that it doesn't negatively impact us for one reason or another. I've tried the nitrogen-sensitive areas because I think that's the majority of town anyways, and it kind of carves out a lot of things. They're thinking about it. That's as far as I can get.
Good tip.
Got some other ideas on that, but we'll talk on another day.
We will get that on an upcoming agenda. Okay, the Clinton Ave easement articles.
Yes, Madam Chair, Select Board, I've invited Peter McConnery, our DPW Director, to give kind of an overview of the project, and then between Peter, Town Council, and myself, we'll answer any questions. But Peter, can you describe to the board the focus of the project while we're taking this on from a DPW standpoint? And this is, Select Board, this is Articles 13 and 14 in your packets.
Good evening, Peter McConaughey, Director of Public Works. So this is the Clinton Ave project. So what had happened is many decades ago, Clinton Ave went from, there was a bridge that went over Falmouth Harbor. Many years ago, the bridge was removed, it was taken down. There's a small area, typically when you go down Clinton Avenue, you take a left turn and you go up Scranton Avenue. There's about 150, 125, 150 foot section of Clinton Ave that's still there. That's a public right-of-way that goes over to the bulkhead. We, as Public Works, do not use that area, but the MES and the Harbor Master does have some area over there that they do some work. There's a local business in that area that their septic system was an old cesspool. It failed, and they went to the Board of Health to have it replaced, and the Board of Health gave them a timeline to get that septic system completed. There's no room in their property to have it completed, but they own the parking lot property across the street, across the small section of Clinton Ave. So They came to our engineering department, and we, as Public Works, we don't allow private utility lines under our roadways. So they came to Public Works to see if there was something that could be done. And through conversations with us, through conversations with the Board of Health, we said, well, it's only a small section of roadway. The bridge is never going to come back. Why would the town even need to have that? Why don't we just abandon the roadway and just have it revert back to the original owners? And so and what that would do is that would allow the owner to put his pipe under that section of that property and be able to get over to the parking lot to put his septic system in on that side. So that's the premise of how this all started. So with work, they came into the engineering department, working with the engineering department, and then we started working with town council to look at that. It's about 100-foot, 7,500-foot section of roadway that we'd be looking to abandon.
So it's the full length from
From-
Grand Ave, right, from Grand Ave to all the way across to the harbor?
No. So when you come down Clinton Avenue, you have to go up Scranton Ave. You could go straight on Clinton Avenue. It goes like another 100 feet, and it hits the bulkhead. That's the small section right there that we're talking about.
Okay.
That's the only small section.
I was on the wrong side of the harbor.
Are we on Article 13 right now?
Yes.
I know they're kind of conflated, but
Yep.
in 13 it says appropriate a sum of money for acquisition of said easements. Shouldn't the property owner just pay his own way? Why do we have to appropriate money to give this guy land?
So the
Or
reason why
whoever
that
it is.
language is included, that's default language. I want to see that in there as a just in case, and it is for recording fees or if additional title work needs to be done. It's that kind of, it's to cover those kinds of expenses.
Why wouldn't those expenses be covered by the private owner taking that land back?
Well, I would do a title search anyway. And again, it's sort of, it really is just in case something goes sideways and there needs to be an additional outlay of cash. It wouldn't be hundreds of thousands of dollars. This language is in every article that Falmouth does for any kind of land acquisition or easement access as an emergency precaution.
Right, because it's some sort of benefit to the town, so it's understandable. So would you expect it would be minimal expense? Thank you.
May I? Has the town ever done this before, Peter, as far as you know? Something like this?
Abandoned roadways? The
Well,
town's
you know,
abandoned
too.
roadways, but specifically for this purpose, I'll give you another example. So up in Benjamin Nye Road, they're looking at putting another development up in that area, and they wanted to see if the town would take that development. But their common area for their shared septic systems is in the center lot, where the road wraps around that area, wraps around where the dwellings are going to be, and there'd be private lines underneath the roadway. So the town will not allow private lines underneath the roadway.
So we're not letting it happen there, but we are considering doing it here?
No, that's why on Clinton Ave, we're looking to if the town abandons this 100-foot section of roadway,
Right.
then it'll revert back to the property owners, and then it won't be the town anymore. It'll be their property. They can put it underneath.
Well, I guess
that
I meant,
section.
have we abandoned property before for something like this? As far as you know?
Not that I know of, no. The town has abandoned roadways, but not for this particular situation. I do
I'm
not
just
believe.
wondering if it's a slippery slope that, we do something like this for this particular landowner and other situations come up where, we're asked to do the same thing. And we can deny it, but I'm just wondering if you could foresee this leading to, an issue that we would have to address more frequently going forward.
No, I understand the concern. I believe in this situation, it's a unique situation. It's just there used to be a bridge, the bridge is gone. I don't ever see the bridge coming back, so it's just that small section. The other side of the harbor, going over towards the yacht club, there's another section of that roadway. That is still town roadway. and that will remain town roadway. But it's just a small little section that separates the businesses with the parking area.
And if I could also, Bob, to your question about precedent, I guess, in the slippery slope, I do see a public benefit in terms of, you mentioned the current septic or cesspool.
It's a failing system.
So each one of these, I think, would be evaluated by select board, town meeting, not a case by case, looking at the nuances of each project. But there's a public benefit here. Yeah?
Correct.
And then, can you just speak to, I know it's the next article, but then, so we'll be abandoning the roadway, it becomes their private property, but we still need easements across that property for waterfront access, correct?
So that would be working with the Harbor Master's Office, would work with Town Council for getting their rights or their easements to be able to get over the property, be able to use their property to get to the bulkhead. It's a town bulkhead.
There's also existing drainage pipes underneath there that we'd want to be able to maintain access to.
Okay. Do we have precedent? You said we don't allow, well, two questions. First of all, is it set policy or is it practice that we don't allow private infrastructure under a public roadway? And do we have examples of the opposite, which is what we're going to end up with, where we have public infrastructure under private property?
We do have areas where there's private infrastructure on the public property, on private roadways or what have you, but in the reverse, is it policy? I think it's set precedents so that we've had these situations come up in the past and we have not allowed it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Thank you, Mr. McConerty.
Thank you.
Okay, last but not least, review and discuss the fertilizer control bylaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kim Comarks, the chair of the Freshwater Pond Advisory Committee, is here tonight to give an overview. I know there's a lot of questions, so I asked Kim to keep his comments to about, 7 to 8 minutes, and then use the balance for questions. There's a copy of the letter that the chair of the Freshwater Ponds Advisory sent.
You have copies of the draft bylaw?
Yes, they do. I think it is included in the packet. Yeah.
Okay, I haven't seen it. I've just seen the,
Stand by 1 second. I just want to make sure it is included in the packets. Yeah. That is it, yeah. Article 22, the language.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, this is, it references Article 22, Select Board, in your packets, and yes, it is in there, Kim.
Okay, great. Good evening, I'm Kim Comart, and thanks for the opportunity to speak with you on behalf of the town's Freshwater Ponds Advisory Committee, which I chair, as Mike mentioned. So we're recommending that Falmouth adopt a bylaw that would require fertilizer retailers to do two simple things to educate consumers. First, post a sign by their fertilizer pallets that informs customers of the damage that too much phosphorus can do to a freshwater pond and the importance of conducting a soil test to determine whether your lawn requires additional phosphorus, which it rarely does. This is an example of the sign that we made for retailers to put up. It's got the required state language on it. That's in the state bylaw. So, yeah, okay. Yeah, so there's a copy of the poster that we made and that we have distributed to fertilizer retailers in Falmouth. And as I'll get into, most of them agreed to put it up and welcomed it. A few didn't. But this is similar to the type of sign that we're asking retailers to put up. The draft bylaw is intended to be consistent with existing Massachusetts fertilizer management policies while establishing a local consumer education and enforcement mechanism. Given the importance of nutrient management to Falmouth's water quality protection efforts, we believe that local reinforcement of these educational objectives is good public policy and represents a logical partnership with the state. We also see this as a soft regulation in that it does not inconvenience retailers, it doesn't affect their financial bottom line, If anything, it could increase their sales because people would buy soil test kits from them. We know that the three major sources of damage to our freshwater ponds, of which there are at least 75 in Falmouth, are septic system effluent, fertilizers, and stormwater runoff. The town is currently doing a lot of watershed planning, which has been referred to tonight, including and sewering, and devoting significant resources to reducing septic effluent and managing stormwater runoff. We're spending tens of millions of dollars on those efforts, and as we heard from the 10-year capital plan, we'll be spending hundreds of millions of dollars on those efforts. When it comes to reducing fertilizer, however, the town does not have a plan or a strategy. Aside from sending a letter each year to a few thousand property owners who reside near surface water bodies, reminding them of the town's nitrogen bylaw, we've essentially thrown up our hands when it comes to trying to reduce fertilizer use. The nitrogen/fertilizer bylaw, Chapter 237, is not being enforced. Ask Greg Frazier and Chuck Martinson at the Department of Marine and Environmental Services how many warnings and fines they've issued for people who have violated the bylaw in the last year, 5 years, or 10 years. In a frank discussion last year with our committee, they acknowledged that the bylaw is not being enforced, and they've issued maybe 10 citations in the last 5 years. Reducing the amount of fertilizer being applied in Falmouth is a challenge, but we shouldn't give up on it. Effective strategies include educating homeowners about the damage fertilizer causes to our waters, raising awareness about fertilizer alternatives, promoting ecologically sensitive landscaping practices, and perhaps certifying and licensing landscapers who use environmentally sensitive practices. Those are all things that we're kicking around in our committee. Another simple strategy, the one we're presenting today, is to make sure that fertilizer retailers in Falmouth are doing their part to educate customers about limiting the application of phosphorus to their lawns. The bylaw we're recommending represents half a page in an 11-page state regulation that's primarily focused on agricultural land. Again, what we're recommending is simple and does not inconvenience retailers or reduce their sales. We know that municipalities regularly adopt regulations that the state has adopted, unless the state preempts such action. For example, Falmouth, like the state, regulates tobacco sales with enforcement by the Select Board. Enforcement by the Board of Health. Falmouth, like the state, regulates alcohol sales with enforcement by the Select Board. Falmouth, like the state, regulates wetlands with enforcement by the Falmouth Conservation Commission. In all those cases, as would be the case with fertilizer retailers, if our recommendation is approved by town meeting, local education, regulation, and enforcement make good sense. We're augmenting the state's efforts to implement and enforce important state policies, laws, and regulations. Everyone is acknowledging that it's impossible for state government to educate, regulate, and enforce rules that apply to thousands of businesses, homeowners, and individuals in 351 cities and towns, and that local education and enforcement are often more effective. For the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources to effectively educate our local retailers about this regulation and effectively enforce it, they would have to notify and periodically remind a few thousand fertilizer retailers in Massachusetts about the regulation, send agents to stores to determine whether they're in compliance. They've got the sign up, they've got the products separated. They'd have to bring them into compliance, conduct follow-up visits, issue warnings and assess fines, and continue to monitor those retailers over time. We have ample evidence that the state fertilizer retailer regulation is not being enforced. We visited the 10 fertilizer retailers in Falmouth last spring. Not one of them was aware of the regulation, and not one of them had posted the required signs or displayed the products separately. When we showed them the regulation, explained its importance in Falmouth, and provided them with signs they could hang in their stores, in most cases they were appreciative and cooperative. In some cases they were uncooperative and even rude. Of course, we could not require them to comply with the regulation. They could have used a visit if this bylaw passes. They could use a visit from the conservation agent or from MES. We have compared notes with many towns on the Cape and the Islands. The story is the same. There is no awareness or enforcement of this retailer regulation. In conclusion, given that lawn fertilizers containing phosphorus are harmful to freshwater ponds, there appears to be nothing in the state regulation that preempts Falmouth from adopting this portion of the state regulation locally. There is no evidence of the state regulation being enforced in Falmouth. The regulation is not onerous and does not add to a retailer's cost, and implementing the regulation is likely to reduce the amount of phosphorus entering our ponds. Our committee is recommending that this bylaw be placed on the October town meeting warrant and with a positive recommendation from the select board. Thank you for your consideration of our recommendation.
Yes, Mr. Muscali.
Mr. Comart, in your research, are you aware of any other towns that have adopted a similar regulation that you're proposing?
No, I'm not. We came upon this regulation. We've talked to towns all over the Cape and the islands. No one else was even aware of this regulation. So our hope is that Falmouth adopts it locally, and then other towns perhaps would do the same. Because if we don't and other towns don't, the likelihood of this of fertilizer retailers becoming aware of this and it being enforced is much less.
Thank you.
Yes.
What I'm, I guess, weighing in my head is what is the potential burden on already busy staff in terms of local enforcement versus what is the benefit of this? Do you have a sense of how much it changes buying patterns or what have you, or what you would expect to be the enforcement?
So there are 10 fertilizer retailers, 10 retailers in Falmouth that sell lawn fertilizer. That's what this refers to. So it's Walmart, Ocean State Job Lot, the hardware stores, and a few nurseries. That's it. And so it's not like there's loads of these stores. In fact, the Falmouth Pond Coalition and the Freshwater Pond Advisory Committee, we're glad to go around to these stores and talk to them, which we've done about this. The problem becomes when they don't want to deal with it. So I don't think it's a heavy burden. I don't think it's going to take a lot of time. If a conservation agent walks into one of these stores as a town official and explains this to them and lets them know that it's a town regulation that's going to be enforced, I don't think it's going to be burdensome on town staff. I don't see it as a big. If we had 50 fertilizer retailers, that's a burden. We're talking about 10.
Okay. Other questions? Yes, Ms. Klein.
I just want to say, first of all, thank you, Mr. Comart, for your going out and actually visiting the businesses and taking the time to speak with them and to educate those individuals. And so I'd just like to ask a little bit about your committee's desire to push beyond simply an educational campaign to pushing to putting it in a bylaw that would have more teeth to it. So could you just explain that? Yeah. What made your committee decide to go beyond just educating?
Because there are retailers who we met who refused to comply. And it's important from our perspective that, and when we went around to these retailers, we said to them, we're not, we were very friendly, but it wasn't as if we went there asking them a favor. We weren't asking them a favor. We were asking them to comply with a state law that they weren't aware of. So our feeling is that just like it's like going to a store that sells cigarettes or going to a store that sells alcohol and saying, would you please do this? And if they say no, there should be a consequence. So there's consequences for people who sell cigarettes or alcohol to people who are under 21 years old. They get warnings and they get fines, and they could lose their license. So from our perspective, if you are a fertilizer retailer and you're not in compliance with the regulation, there should be a consequence. Otherwise, like, why bother? I got almost physically pushed out of a store by a guy who said to me, "This is a private business." I said, "I'm aware it's a private business. You're a fertilizer retailer. So this regulation applies to you." But, you know, unless there's, you know, in that case, it would have been great for a town official to go in there and talk to this person, and for there to be possible fines. And we're recommending much lower fines than the state law. You'll see in here. It's like $50 for a first violation, $100, and then $300 for a third violation. But as long as the violation persists, you pay a daily fine. And I guess the last thing I say is, like, why not do this? Why wouldn't we do this? It's not onerous. It's not a problem. All we're doing is helping the state, reinforcing what the state is doing, and helping the state with an important public policy, which we've done for cigarettes and alcohol and wetlands protection. I think they're analogous.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
No. All right. Thank you, Mr.
All
Comer.
right. Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time and the effort that you put in your whole committee. So thank
What was that?
I said I appreciate the effort that you and your whole committee put
Yeah,
in. So
thank you.
Okay, last item on the business agenda, discuss and consider a vote to send a letter to state legislators regarding expanding the state low-interest loan program for septic systems to allow for upgrades to improve nitrogen removal in nitrogen-sensitive areas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Under current state law, the only septic system upgrades that are eligible for low-interest loans from the state loan program are those that have failed to meet Title V requirements. The proposed amendment to the law, which Massachusetts State Treasurer Deborah Goldberg sent a letter to state legislators proposing this change, would expand the loan program to include septic system upgrades required in connection with a watershed management plan. Over the past several months, town staff, along with the Water Quality Management Committee and Board of Health, are in the process of developing watershed management plan permit applications for the state designated nitrogen sensitive areas, or NSAs. One component under consideration is requiring the property owners in certain areas to upgrade their septic systems to best available nitrogen removal septic systems. And Madam Chair and Select Board staff feels that a letter to our state delegation indicating our support for expansion of that loan program is a great step forward. We don't have a draft letter included in your packets tonight. This is asking for Select Board direction to authorize myself and the Assistant Town Manager to generate a letter.
Okay. Is there a time sensitivity to this?
That's a great question. I don't have insight on that. I thought that that they were in recess, but it was something that was brought to, just within the last couple of weeks, it was brought to the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund Management Board by Cape Cod Commission staff and others. So, yeah, I apologize. I don't know exactly what the time sensitivity is. It's a fairly straightforward issue. If the board supports the concept, the thought here, just to make it quick and easy, would be to vote to authorize the town manager to send a letter. This is perhaps a good counterpoint to some previous discussions where we're not necessarily happy with the direction that the state is going. This is one where the legislation does seem to be really well aligned with the Cape's priorities.
Okay. The reason one reason I asked is we have two other letters directed to various state agencies or authorities that we'll be considering at our next meeting, and we will have representatives from the Water Quality Management Committee who asked for those letters. So if we wanted to have a draft letter that the folks could see and weigh in on, that could also be a possibility if so desired. Are there questions, concerns?
Just, I want to clarify that I interpreted things correctly. I read over, we received from some constituents the draft itself, and it did a nice job of outlining the changes. I couldn't see a downside from Falmouth's perspective, and I just wanted to make sure that I was interpreting that correctly.
Yeah, I read through the legislation as well, that at least the legislation includes a number of issues, so this is just one of the issues in the legislation. And yeah, this is pretty straightforward. It's a great loan program. It exists for Title V violations now. It does not exist for best available nitrogen removal septic systems in connection with the nitrogen sensitive area. So, you know, this is a win. And there's a little bit of state revolving fund money. There's no Falmouth money involved. There's a little bit of state revolving fund money, maybe a little bit of county money because the county administers the program locally for us, but it is a revolving fund. So, you know, we're not talking about a big outlay. So from my perspective, this is, you know, one small tool to make our water quality improvement efforts a little bit more affordable for homeowners.
Mr. Brown.
Has there been any traction on that refundable tax credit for septic improvements?
Yeah, there has. It moved, I think it's working its way through Ways and Means. It might even be in third reading at this point. So somewhat to my surprise, my pleasant surprise, it is moving its way through the legislative process.
Would it be relevant to make mention of that in this letter? That, you know, it's
probably not. I mean, the board already sent a letter on it. You know, we could certainly touch base with our state legislators and see if there's any particular sticking point, and if there might be, you know, an update letter, a new letter on that one, but it's different legislation, so probably best to keep them separate.
Okay, thanks.
Is there any concern that by expanding the eligibility for this fund, like, is there a limit on how much can be funded? And if they expand what it can be used for, that it ends up being more competitive for anybody to get money from it? I'm being a pessimist.
Not to my knowledge. You know, the state revolving fund has a lot of money going through it, and most of that is for really big projects, right? For the you know, the subsidized interest for the really big projects. This is a much smaller portion. I mean, yes, it will compete with funds for at some level, but again, it is revolving, so it's, you know, it's a timing issue. There may be some impact, but it's really not going to be a big impact because it's a revolving fund.
Okay.
So the matter that's listed in our agenda says regarding expanding the state low-interest loan program, but we're really talking about specific legislation that's pending, right? I mean, is that, so I mean, because it seems much broader, what you're asking for here. What it should be is something tied to the specific legislation that's currently before the state legislature.
Sure, if you want to add, I think it's House 5518.
Yeah, I just think,
Yeah.
you know, that it should specify the legislation we're talking about rather than, you know, an overall expansion of the program.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
That's all.
So what is the feeling of the board? Vote direction and have town management draft and send a letter, or draft a letter to bring back next week for approval?
I would just authorize them to draft it and send it.
Okay.
With the feedback and Mr. Miscalli's suggestion.
Okay. Is that a motion?
It is.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. All right. Great.
Thanks for
Thank
bringing
you.
it up.
Okay. We have minutes from our last meeting, July 7th, to approve. Are there any amendments or revisions?
And so one misspelling on the public comment, Mr. Doobie, is spelled with a Y, not E. First speaker on public comment.
That was my comment, my one catch to Mr. Brown.
Okay.
Motion to approve with the one edit.
Second?
All right.
Third.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, excellent. Any select board reports?
Just two quick ones. The Veterans Committee is on summer break and recess, but before they did break, We did receive input that we'll have to factor in regarding their concerns regarding assistance with the retirement of one individual, and I guess this is also capitalized in the need for specifically female assistance for veterans or family members of veterans that come in that need assistance specifically from a female. I flagged this just for your awareness because that did come up. I also attended Council on Aging. They are doing extremely well. As we're sitting here in the senior center, they're at capacity in terms of programming and looking to see where they can make small adjustments, but with more and more signups monthly, they are at capacity, but they are also not saying no to anybody. So they're doing a great job.
At capacity in a relatively new building. Something to think about.
You said it.
Well, I'm saying, we're getting ready to build another building. We're questioning the size, so.
Any other, yes, Ms. Klein?
I just wanted to share that the Affordable Housing Committee is continuing to track a couple of items in addition to reviewing projects as they come forward. But right now, they're just keeping an eye on the seasonal communities, the tax exemption article from last spring's town meeting, just keeping an eye on those. And then also keeping an eye on the possibility of a real estate transfer fee. So be attending that meeting this month, and I'll hopefully have an update. Also, the Solid Waste Advisory Committee is moving forward with a kind of a strategic plan, so a bigger picture look at what are we doing when it comes to solid waste in Falmouth, and trying to be strategic about moving into the future.
I think the transfer fee is dead this year, from what I understand, so unfortunately, but I think it's dead. I have not had an opportunity to make any of the meetings. I have met with the chairs of both the Bicycle Pedestrian Committee and Mr. Comart for the freshwater pond, so hopefully I'll have a better report next time on that and some of the other committees.
As mentioned earlier, I'll be attending the County Commissioners meeting on Wednesday morning, and we're going to have Mr. Lannon attend, and I think it'll be interesting to just start the conversation about, water conservation in Cape Cod in general, and I think the commissioners are likely to engage the Cape Cod Commission to look at, the sustainability of our water supply and the level of development on Cape Cod that's, it's never stops. It's just a continuous thing, and we're hearing about it from a lot of people about, geez, it's more and more giant buildings, and the Cape's getting overrun, and I think it is a real concern of whether or not there's enough water in the ground. And the state puts a limit on how much we can extract. So at some point, we have to say, which is it? And, Monomoskoye and Brewster their water lens was getting so low, they designated as a DCPC, which is a designation as an environmental concern, and it puts a stop to development. We got to be careful how you talk about stuff like that, because we don't want to stop all development, but we need to understand what we're developing and if it's going to be sustainable.
Yeah.
I have not had a chance to, as Mr. Muscali, to attend most committees that I am a new liaison to, but have been very much in touch with the chair of the beach committee through an active summer season. So, and we'll be attending the beach staff appreciation dinner this Thursday, which is very much warranted. Okay, future agenda items. Any requests from folks? Yes, Ms. Klein.
I have two. I'd like to revisit a letter to the state about Chapter 40B law, which had been discussed. And I'd just like to come back to that. I've been talking with various state folks, including Thomas Moakley, about how we could try and better leverage their representation combined with our representation to try and urge the state to make some moves on that. So I'd like to revisit that topic. And I'd also Like to revisit an ever-popular one, which is pickleball. I've been hearing from a lot of folks, and there's some rising tensions surrounding pickleball playing in town, and folks feel that it's due for another look because they've been waiting, and it's getting a little frustrating, so I'd like to revisit that.
Both are definitely on the list.
I did say that I would help make some edits to the letter to the legislature, and I haven't done that, but I will. You're right, we need to get back to that.
Okay. So if the two of you would like to work on that, and let me know when you're ready to bring another draft back to the board, that would
Okay.
be great.
That sounds great.
Thanks.
Terrific. Okay. If there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The Steamship Authority is a proud partner in many Falmouth community events, including town meeting coverage, and for good reason. Not only do we have a terminal and offices here, about 1/3 of our employees call Falmouth their home. We always work hard to serve our neighbors, friends, and the traveling public. We recently put 7 new electric buses into service at our Falmouth parking lots. We're adding new vessels to our fleet, continuing work on our energy-efficient Woods Hole terminal buildings, and adding solar panels at our largest parking lot. At the Steamship Authority, we're serving the islands and you.
Welcome to the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce. The Falmouth Chamber is dedicated to working on behalf of our members to make Falmouth a better place to live, work, and conduct business. We are committed to developing the economic, cultural, educational, and civic interests of our community and welcome the support from all organizations to achieve our combined goals. Whether you call Falmouth home, are a summer resident, or a visitor, we hope you take advantage of all that the Chamber has to offer.
Hi, it's Brendan from Crane Appliance. Since 1983, our goal as a family-owned company has been simple: to give our neighbors on the Cape and Islands a great shopping experience. Rest easy knowing our professional team will listen to your needs and help you pick the perfect appliances for your home. At Crane Appliance, we know how difficult appliance shopping can be. Our team is here for you. Crane Appliance, we call the Cape and Islands home.
Carlson Printing, 508-548-7303. Our email address is carlsonprinting@gmail.com. Carlson Printing, for all your printing needs. John's Liquor Store, 729 Main Street, Falmouth, 508-548-2287.